As I was doing chores, I heard a voice. I heard shouting from the venue. It was my father-in-law's voice, asking, "Why isn't Emily here?" I thought I should at least go and greet him, so I headed toward the venue. Then I heard my husband and mother-in-law laughing and saying things like, "If you're talking about that dirty woman, we've made her work in the back. What do you think a wife is for?" My name is Emily. I'm 23 and work in an office. I'm dating a guy named Steve. Our meeting was a bit unusual. I lived alone, and Steve lived in the apartment next door. One day, on my day off, I heard a loud noise coming from his apartment. I thought maybe he hit the wall, but I wasn't being loud, and my TV was on low. I felt uncomfortable, but started to think maybe someone had fallen. Worried, I rang his doorbell, but there was no answer. I rang it again and heard a faint voice. "Who is it? Are you okay?" I called out, and after a while, the door opened. Steve was standing there, looking like he was about to fall. "Are you okay?" I asked. He leaned against the door, looking dazed, and said, "I'm starving. I haven't eaten anything in days." I quickly went to my apartment, grabbed a sandwich and some tea I had saved from yesterday, and brought it to his room. "Here, have this if you want." "Are you sure?" he asked. "I'd rather help than let you starve to death," I said. He thanked me and ate the sandwich quickly, then drank the tea in one go. "Thank you," he said, sighing in relief. "I thought I was going to die. I'll definitely repay you for the sandwich later." "No need," I replied. "It's not a big deal, but why haven't you eaten in so long?" He explained. "After paying for tuition and rent, I ran out of money." "So you're a student?" "I'm a senior in college. I don't have a part-time job or anything. Actually, the pub where I worked suddenly went out of business." "What? That's terrible." "So I didn't get paid, and life became hard for me all of a sudden." "Didn't you talk to your parents?" "I didn't want to worry them." "I understand, but I think you should tell them. It's dangerous if you collapse from hunger, like you almost did." "You're right. I'll be more careful." Right after that, his stomach growled. I couldn't help but laugh. "You must be really hungry." "Well, it makes sense since you haven't eaten in days." I decided to let him try my homemade cooking. He hesitated, but I insisted, telling him it would be bad if he collapsed from malnutrition. So, I made him fried rice in my room. "This is delicious. It's been a while since I had food this good." He ate quickly and happily, like a child, which was really cute and made me feel protective of him. We introduced ourselves and exchanged contact information. I told him to reach out if he ever needed help. It seemed like he found another part-time job soon after, and he got a job at a restaurant that provided free meals. "Thanks to you, I won't starve to death." "I'm glad to hear that." Recently, when I came home from work, I'd cook a little extra and invite him over to eat together. I was always lonely eating alone, so it was nice to have someone to share meals with. While I was thinking about that, he suddenly looked serious. "What's wrong?" I asked. As I asked nervously, he swallowed and said, "Emily, would you go out with me?" "Huh? I know I'm just a poor college student, and I'm not a good match for you, but I've fallen for you." I was surprised by his directness, but I also liked him, so I said, "I like you too, Steve." He was so happy when I agreed, and we started dating. We enjoyed spending time together, talking about things like whose room to hang out in since we lived next door to each other. Our relationship went smoothly, and after he graduated, he found a job. We decided to move into a bigger place when he started working. Although we had already been living together, we thought it would be better to share a larger room to lower the rent for both of us. We continued dating for a while and got married when I was 26, and he was 25. Even though we kept living in the same room, not much changed after our marriage. However, one thing did change right away: Steve's mother, who became my mother-in-law. Before, we had never been involved with her much, but after we got married, we had to see her more often. Even though she had never visited our home when we were living together, she started coming over a lot after we got married. "Emily, do you even clean the room properly?" she asked. "Look at all this dust. I can't reach that high, and I don't have time to clean up there after work." "What? You're talking back to your mother-in-law? You're a cheeky wife." "I just said I couldn't do what I couldn't do." "You're just full of excuses. I can't believe Steve married someone like you." My mother-in-law took every chance to criticize me. Since I left for work earlier and returned earlier than my husband, she would harass me non-stop until he came home. I tried to do the housework, hoping my husband would get home soon. "What are you making?" she asked. "Huh? I'm grilling fish." "Steve won't be satisfied with that. Make a more elaborate meat dish." "What are you doing?" Mother-in-law? My mother-in-law threw the grilled fish I had made into the trash. I can't believe I left the daily cooking to you. From now on, I'll do it. If she cooked, that meant she'd come over every day. I didn't want that at all. There's no need, mother-in-law. I'll cook properly. No, I don't trust you. I'll come and cook every day. Just then, Steve came home. She immediately talked to him about it. Oh, you're going to help with housework, Mom? That's great. Please do, huh? Steve decided without even asking for my opinion. I'm looking forward to cooking with you, Emily, my mother-in-law said, smiling proudly. From then on, it was awful. She got a key from Steve and started coming into our house, waiting for me to get home from work. You're late. Don't just leave everything to me. I'm cooking. Start cleaning now. She made me do housework even when I was exhausted from work. Even if the house wasn't that dirty, she constantly watched me. If I took a break, she would scold me nonstop. I had no choice but to keep cleaning, which made me even more tired. She really did come every day to cook, and she even ate dinner with us. She would badmouth me in front of Steve, calling me useless. Don't cause trouble for Mom, Steve would say, blaming me instead of scolding his mother. My mother-in-law could come over every day because her husband was working abroad, and she lived alone, so she visited us often. She also started pressuring me about having a child. There's nothing better than having a child. Hurry up and have one or two. I tried to explain that it's not something we can just do right away, we have to wait. Younger people these days always have excuses, she said. I had Steve right after I got married. Huh? It's because you're working, she replied. What? I was a housewife, so I could have children right away. Her logic didn't make sense. If you properly support your husband's life, you'll have more time for children. You're too tired from work. What a thing to say. That's so cruel. I don't think it has anything to do with it. Shut up. If you don't get pregnant soon, we'll find another wife. Another wife? Of course, there's no value in a woman who can't have children. I was shocked by how she was speaking. It felt like such a discriminatory thing to say. You really are the type to always argue back. I'll tell Steve, she said. I thought she was the one who always argued back. When Steve came home, his mother immediately told him what happened. Emily, did you talk back to my mom? What are you thinking? Steve was instantly angry after hearing his mother's version of the story. It's probably your fault we can't have children, he said. What? Are you saying that too? There's no way it's my fault. What nonsense are you talking about? I was getting fed up with my husband, who always sided with his mother. I even started to think maybe it would be better to get a divorce. That's when my husband's grandmother, who had been in the hospital, passed away. A funeral was held, and even though I was thinking about divorce, I had to attend, but my husband and his mother told me not to come to the main area and to prepare things in the back. I had no choice but to make tea and do chores in the back. I decided that once the funeral was over, I would leave my husband. While I was doing the chores, I heard yelling from the main room. Why isn't Emily here? It was my father-in-law's voice. It seemed he had returned from his overseas business trip. Well, since it was his mother's funeral, it made sense that he'd be here. I thought I should at least go and greet him, so I headed to the main venue. Then I heard my husband and mother-in-law talking and smirking. It's obvious she's not family. We're making that dirty woman work in the back. They even said this in front of my father-in-law. I was shocked at how little things had changed. The next moment, my father-in-law's angry voice rang out. Are you kidding me? What do you think a wife is for? My husband and mother-in-law were stunned by his shouting. What are you angry about? They asked. Yeah, you really surprised us, my mother-in-law added. I'm disgusted that you two think like this, my father-in-law said. I'll call Emily. When I heard that, I went to where they were. Father-in-law, long time no see, I said. He looked surprised. Emily, did you hear that? Yes, I replied. As I walked in, my husband and mother-in-law gave me disgusted looks. Emily, could it be that you've been suffering from bullying from my son and wife? My father-in-law asked. I answered, yes. She came to the house almost every day to complain about me, and Steve joined in to blame me. My father-in-law glared at his wife and son. You guys are the worst. Have some shame. My husband tried to argue back. What's wrong with us? What did we do that's so bad? I thought it was really the worst that they didn't even realize their mistakes. My mother, in other words, her grandmother, was always troubled by being bullied by her mother-in-law. That's why I wanted to be kind to my son's wife when I became a father-in-law. I never bullied her. You don't have any bad memories from my mother, do you? My father-in-law asked. Well, that's true, but even so, you're bullying Emily and making her suffer. What kind of nerve do you have? He added. Because this woman won't give us a grandchild. I think having a child is a blessing. Just because you had children early doesn't mean you should force that on your daughter-in-law. You guys are really hopeless, my father-in-law said, clearly upset. Then, he turned to me. Emily, what do you think? Do you want to continue your marriage with my son? My husband, looking shocked, said, Hey, Dad, what are you saying? I ignored my husband and looked at my father-in-law. I want to divorce him, I said. Hey, Emily, are you serious? My husband was flustered. Your mother told me that if I can't have a child, I have to find another wife, I said. Wait a minute, Emily, what are you saying? My husband was panicking. I don't want to be with a mother-in-law who says such things, and I'm fed up with a husband who joins in the blame without defending me. I'll divorce my husband, no matter what, I declared. When I said that, my father-in-law replied, I think that's a good idea. If you're going to divorce, there's no need to help with this funeral anymore. Emily, thank you for everything up to now. You can go home and pack your things. Yes, thank you. I'm glad I could talk to you, father-in-law, I said, then left the venue. My husband and mother-in-law looked pale. Since everyone overheard our conversation, news of my husband and mother-in-law's bullying quickly spread, and they were looked down upon by all the relatives. With my father-in-law's help, I officially divorced my husband. It seems my father-in-law was so appalled by what happened that he also divorced my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law was left abandoned by my father-in-law and had nowhere to go, so she went to my ex-husband's place. But since I had been paying for most of the living expenses, they soon started running out of money. My ex-husband had saved nothing, so the two of them were struggling to make ends meet. Well, it's none of my business, so I don't really care. As for me, I now live alone in a single-person apartment and enjoy my life. I recently started keeping a cat, so I don't think I'll be dating for a while.
Something feels off. I try to pinch my cheeks to ward off the sudden wave of sleepiness, but it's utterly ineffective. There wasn't anything particularly exhausting about today, just a meal at my in-laws. And I'm not usually short on sleep. Why then, I wonder drowsily, when I hear my husband's laughter. Good night, LOL. I'll make sure you have sweet dreams. My name is Lila. A 24-year-old office worker, newly married to Riley, who is 5 years my senior. We met through a friend and, after dating for 2 years, were happily married. We had a grand wedding recently and received blessings from many people. Just as I was dreaming about our happy married life ahead, an unexpected misfortune struck. Emerson, my mother-in-law, suddenly fell ill and passed away in no time. Emerson was cheerful and very kind, delighted when I first went to greet her. Nice to meet you, I'm Lila. Oh, what a joy to have such a lovely woman as my son's wife. I've always dreamed of having tea time with my son's wife. I'd be delighted. Please, let's have tea time together. Though I was nervous, Emerson welcomed me with a full smile, making me feel at ease and fond of her. We had planned to have tea time together after the wedding settled down, but that dream was shattered with Emerson's passing. We were busy with Emerson's funeral, sorting out her belongings, and handling the inheritance, finally settling down a year later. Then, I got a call from Trevor, my father-in-law. Layla, how about a meal at our house next weekend night? I'm thinking of ordering takeout. Yes, of course. Thank you. So, I was invited to dine with Trevor next weekend night, along with Riley. Trevor ordered Singaporean cuisine, which he loves, and we enjoyed the feast. The three of us gathered around the dining table. It was my first time trying Singaporean cuisine, and everything was delicious. Except, the soup tasted oddly. Curious, I asked my husband. Hey Riley, doesn't this soup taste a bit strange? That's just how this dish is. You're not used to Singaporean cuisine, haha. Though Riley laughed it off, I couldn't stomach the soup, so I avoided it and ate the other dishes. Then, I felt Trevor's sharp gaze.
Lila, I went through the trouble of ordering this, so make sure you drink the soup.
Startled by Trevor's outburst, I hurriedly gulped down the soup. It still tasted weird. The strange taste spread throughout my mouth, and I tried to cleanse my palate with water and other dishes. Gradually, my vision blurred, and I found myself slumping over the table.
What's happening? I'm incredibly sleepy. This isn't good. I'll really fall asleep. I need to stay awake.
As my consciousness faded, I could hear Riley's laughter.
It seems to have worked. Dad, is that thing ready?
Of course, it's all set. It's in the dresser drawer in the bedroom.
The new ones are amazing, only 0.01 millimeters thick. We didn't have those when I was young.
Realizing Riley and Trevor were discussing contraceptives, I felt a sense of danger but then lost consciousness completely. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed.
What happened?
I murmured groggily.
Oh, thank goodness. You're awake.
Looking towards the voice, there was our neighbor, Luella. Luella immediately called the doctor, who explained that I had been given a large dose of sleeping pills.
Sleeping pills! So that's why the soup tasted so odd.
Then, I learned from Luella.
Your dad and husband ran off in the car, so I accompanied you in the ambulance. I'm so glad you woke up safely. Really? Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the trouble. But, what do you mean Dad and my husband fled in a car? Actually,
Luella found out that the fire alarm was ringing at my in-laws' house and it wouldn't stop, so she decided to check on them. When she rang the doorbell, Trevor came out.
Yes.
What's going on, ringing the fire alarm like this? It's been going off for so long. Haven't you found the source yet? This is serious. I'm coming in. Please, it's okay. Don't come into the house.
What are you talking about? We're supposed to help each other out in times of need.
Luella said that, barging into the house, and found me lying listlessly in the living room.
Oh my! You've collapsed from inhaling smoke. This is terrible. I need to call an ambulance right away. No, this is different.
Trevor and my husband tried to deny it hastily, but Luella was convinced I had collapsed from smoke inhalation and called for emergency and fire services on the spot.
Lila is just sleeping.
That's right. My wife is just tired and sleeping. There's nothing to worry about.
Despite their desperate explanations, Luella objected.
It's strange that she won't wake up with such a loud noise going on. I'm worried. I wonder if the ambulance will arrive soon.
Luella was frantic. Before we knew it, people had started gathering. Riley and Trevor began to sweat profusely. Soon after, Riley and Trevor hurriedly jumped into a car and fled, leaving me behind. That's why Luella ended up accompanying me in the ambulance.
Such a thing. Thank you so much.
I expressed my gratitude to Luella. Then, when I told the doctor about the conversation I heard between Riley and Trevor before losing consciousness, he grimaced and made a call, and I was informed that Riley and Trevor were also admitted to the same hospital.
Riley and Dad are hospitalized. Why?
Apparently, after fleeing the house in the car, Riley and Trevor were driving frantically to get as far away as possible. As a result, the car Riley was driving crashed into the wall of a mansion, causing an accident. Both were brought to this hospital by ambulance, severely injured with broken bones, but their lives were not in danger. Hearing the reason for their admission, I was overwhelmed with anger, disgust, and various other emotions.
They got what they deserved. I'll never forgive them.
I decided to hire a lawyer and sue over this incident. Then, sleeping pills were detected in the soup bowl I had finished, and Riley and Trevor were arrested for assault. The news even reported on the incident. Later, during the police investigation, they were rearrested for attempted rape. Trevor was stressed from being busy with Emerson's funeral and other matters, becoming frustrated. He was planning to visit a nightclub, but when Riley found out, he made a proposition to Trevor.
Dad, if you're that frustrated, I can lend you Lila. But in return, give me Mom's kimonos. Really? I'd be thrilled to be with young Lila, but…
Why Mom's kimonos? Are you running out of money?
Yeah, I kinda blew through my savings.
Riley had squandered his savings on gambling and offered me in exchange for Emerson's kimonos, which came from a distinguished family and were valuable. Riley knew this and proposed the trade to Trevor.
Lila doesn't know I'm hooked on gambling. I've used quite a bit from our joint savings account, so I want to cover it up before she finds out. I see. But I can't imagine Lila agreeing to be with me. That's okay. I have a good idea. You still have some of Mom's sleeping pills, right?
Emerson had been prescribed sleeping pills for her insomnia before she passed away. With those sleeping pills remaining, Riley and Trevor concocted their plan. They decided to dissolve powdered sleeping pills in the soup and proceed after I had fallen asleep.
Perfect plan, right? This way I get money, and Dad's frustration is relieved. It's all good.
Right. Let's invite Lila over for a dinner party next weekend.
However, their scheme was abruptly foiled by the ringing of the fire alarm, leading to the foolish outcome of causing an accident in their haste to flee in the car. It turns out Riley and Trevor are hospitalized in the same room.
Damn it! How did it come to this? It was supposed to be a perfect plan.
If only the fire alarm hadn't gone off. In the end, we couldn't do anything with Lila and ended up getting seriously injured. What a mess.
Damn it!
As they openly wept and voiced their grievances, a nurse visiting their room informed them with displeasure. I had demanded compensation through a lawyer in the divorce proceedings, but both of them flatly refused to pay any settlement for the divorce.
To demand compensation from me, her husband, in a divorce trial. Nothing actually happened, so it should be fine. That's right! In the end, all we did was give Lila sleeping pills and nothing else.
Both their reasoning left me and my lawyer utterly dumbfounded. Even when told that administering sleeping pills without consent is unacceptable, they wouldn't listen at all. Moreover,
Hey! Lila! Tell the police not to sue me and Dad. If the victim asks for a non-prosecution, the police won't sue, right?
they had the audacity to command. How low could they possibly be? I continued to ignore them, but they persistently demanded not to sue and to ask for a lighter sentence. However, their demands suddenly stopped at one point. After giving orders every day, it was strange for them to suddenly cease. Curious, I decided to investigate. It turns out they had encountered a serious problem. The owner of the mansion whose wall was destroyed when Riley and Trevor crashed into it was furious and had demanded they pay for the repairs. The damage was extensive, so the cost of repairs was significant. Moreover, my husband had lied, saying,
"We were rushing to the hospital because Dad was suffering from an illness, and that led to the driving mistake."
However, the incident was reported in the news. Upon learning the truth, the mansion owner became even more enraged and insisted on receiving both the repair costs and compensation from the divorce trial. As a result, Riley and Trevor seemed to have bigger problems than just dealing with me.
"It wasn't on purpose. Please forgive us. We beg you."
Riley and Trevor were pleading, but the mansion owner was unforgiving. They were told they must pay no matter what. Since the mansion owner hired a lawyer, Riley and Trevor also had to hire one to handle the situation. Since I had a lawyer as well, the compensation for the divorce was smoothly negotiated between the lawyers. Given their clear wrongdoing, our demands were almost fully met. I also demanded and received the money Riley had misappropriated from our joint savings account. Although I hadn't noticed his gambling addiction, I remembered how his overtime had suddenly increased at one point. Probably, he was lying about working late and going to pachinko instead. And so, I naturally proceeded with the divorce from Riley. The negotiations were handled by our lawyers, and though initially reluctant, Riley agreed to the divorce when I firmly insisted. Riley's lawyer played a significant role by convincing them that they were in a very unfavorable position and needed to show sincerity. Later, I went to thank our neighbor Luella again.
Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude.
Oh, I didn't do anything special. It's good that you're safe. Perhaps Emerson was looking out for you.
Emerson, you say? What do you mean?
After I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, the firefighters came and checked the cause of the fire alarm. However, the only source of fire in the house was a candle on Emerson's altar, which no one should have lit. This wasn't enough to trigger the fire alarm, indicating a possible malfunction as there were no other signs of fire.
Maybe Emerson is always watching over you? She was so happy to have such a lovely daughter-in-law,
Luella told me with a smile. It might have been a coincidence, but even so, I felt a warmth thinking about Emerson's kind smile. After expressing my thanks to Luella again, I headed to a certain cake shop. This shop sells a chocolate cake that I've always loved. When I had promised to have tea time with Emerson, I wanted her to try the chocolate from this cake shop. After buying sweet buns, I went to the florist to buy flowers that matched Emerson's cheerful image, with a fresh impression, and headed to visit her grave. Offering the flowers and chocolate at the grave, I expressed my gratitude to Emerson.
Dear Emerson, thank you so much. Your help saved me. Though I've divorced Riley, I will always love you, Mom.
I wished I could have talked more with Emerson. I wanted to have that tea party.
This chocolate was meant to be shared with you, Emerson, during our tea time. It's really delicious.
Just then, the wind blew softly. Feeling as if Emerson had responded, a tear fell from my eye. But thinking that crying would worry Emerson, I lifted my face, smiled, and said,
I'll visit again, Emerson,
and moved on. I decided to take the chocolate back with me later, as I couldn't leave it at the grave. On the way home, I felt incredibly refreshed. Despite everything, I vowed to live energetically from tomorrow on. Returning to single life, I threw myself into work more than ever before. Riley and Trevor, with their complex fractures, seem to still be in the hospital. The owner of the mansion is trying to collect the repair costs before they are discharged and sent to prison, and it seems they had to sell their car and belongings to pay back the money using their savings. Physically and mentally devastated, and with prison time awaiting them. They are experiencing a living hell. I hope they reflect deeply and pay for their crimes once they are discharged and sent to prison. Since then, I've been visiting Emerson's grave regularly, updating her on my life. Having had enough of love for a while, I've decided to enjoy being single and am studying hard to earn new qualifications. I plan to live every day without regrets. My husband called me disgusting for my severe morning sickness, looking down on me with cold eyes.
You're the one who threw up and made a mess, right? Hurry up and open the window to air it out. If the smell sticks, you're paying for it. Just because you find it hard to go shopping or cook doesn't mean morning sickness isn't an illness. Don't be so stupid.
On top of that, as my morning sickness got worse, my husband left me at home and went on an overseas trip with mother-in-law, Audrina. That was the last straw for me, and I began to plot my revenge. A week later, my husband called, furious. I laughed it off.
Since you told me to clean the house, I did just as you said. Got a problem with that?
I'm Kimberly, a 28-year-old office worker. My husband, Eamon, and I live in a detached house and both work while we've recently become pregnant. While I was happy, my morning sickness was so severe that I couldn't go to work on some days. Fortunately, many at my workplace were understanding.
Once you get through this, it'll get easier, so make sure to rest and take care of yourself.
They gave me some time off when I was considering quitting. So, I spent my days at home, resting as much as possible, eating when I could, and doing household chores. The problem was my husband. He practically stopped doing any housework at all.
You're always at home, right? Even a pregnant woman can clean, so at least do that.
While my husband used to do household chores when we were both working, he stopped doing anything since I took my leave. Even when I said I couldn't do it because of severe nausea, he wouldn't listen. Moreover, he compared me to other pregnant women he had seen, saying,
"Just being lazy and slacking off in the name of morning sickness."
Furthermore, he was extremely averse to me vomiting. The first time I vomited at home, I didn't make it to the toilet and ended up using the living room trash can. Seeing this, my husband, pinching his nose, hurried me to ventilate the room and kept yelling at me, even though my nausea hadn't subsided. Although I vomited into a plastic bag in the trash can, so the can itself wasn't dirty, he made me dispose of the bag and then threw the trash can away.
Hey, what's with that attitude? Why are you telling me to open a window when I'm vomiting? You could open it yourself. And I properly sealed the double bag before throwing it away, so why throw out the trash can in front of me as if to make a point?
Disgusting, smelly, don't talk.
Even if it's in a plastic bag, droplets might have gotten on the trash can.
After that, no matter what I said, "Don't talk because it's smelly," he wouldn't even listen. I started to consider divorce. Maybe once my morning sickness settled down and I could go back to work, my husband would return to being the kind and helpful person he used to be. But could a husband who hurled such abuse at me while I was suffering return to how he was? Or was this his true nature? As I worried, my morning sickness only got worse. With nausea hitting me multiple times a day, I started carrying a plastic bag with me everywhere in the house to vomit without my husband seeing and dispose of it. However, one time, I didn't manage to dispose of it in time, and he saw me with the bag.
"Don't touch anything, all right? You're paying for the sofa you just sat on since you're going to dispose of it because you dirted it."
He looked at me with utter disgust. When I impulsively brought up divorce, I noticed he was holding a pamphlet in his hand. He spread it out to show me.
"In about 2 weeks, I'm going on a trip overseas with Mom. We plan to stay for about a week. Don't slack off on cleaning just because I'm not here. Keep the house clean."
What? What are you thinking?
While looking at me coldly, my husband laughed in a low voice.
"I don't want to stay in a house you've made filthy. The morning sickness should settle down in about 3 weeks, right? By the time I'm back from the trip, it should be nearly over, so clean the house in the meantime."
Fine.
I'll give the house a thorough cleaning.
The next 2 weeks were tough for me. He doubled down on doing nothing, even eating strongly scented meals or spraying harsh perfume around the room despite my pleas because it made me nauseous. Despite locking me in the bathroom, he'd bang on the door furiously and yell if he wanted to use it himself. This lifestyle continued. I immediately informed my parents that I had decided on divorce. Since my husband's attitude changed, I had been discussing it with my parents, who must have realized from my words that convincing me otherwise was no longer possible. They told me to come back home immediately. However, just divorcing and returning to my parents' home wasn't enough for me. I was determined to teach my husband, who lacked any awareness of being a father and thought nothing of the individual differences in pregnancy and morning sickness, a lesson. 2 weeks later, I saw my husband off with a large carry-on bag. These 2 weeks were the peak of my morning sickness, and I had lost more than 2 kilos. If it continued like this, I would end up hospitalized due to severe pregnancy sickness. Seeing me visibly thinner, my husband still called me dirty and, after repeatedly ordering me to clean the house, fled like he was escaping. I stayed at the entrance until he was out of sight, then took a deep breath and made a phone call. A week later, I was leisurely sitting in my parents' living room when calls from my husband kept coming in. Calls from my husband kept coming in one after another. After watching for a while, my parents started to panic, so I reluctantly answered.
Don't mess with me. What the hell is this? Explain.
I instinctively moved my smartphone away from my ear at the sound of my husband's loud voice the moment the call connected. Still, I sighed at the loud enough voice and listened to him.
I can't get into the house. What's going on? Don't change the locks on me while I'm away.
The real estate agent changed them. It's kind of gross to have the same keys as the previous tenant for the next one, right? So, they changed the locks when selling the house. Huh? Real estate agent? Oh, didn't you see the sign? It's right there next to it, for sale.
There was silence on the phone for a while before the angry voice came again.
What are you doing on your own? Who gave you permission to sell it? Why are you selling it?
You said the whole house smells. So, I cleaned the entire house, including that. And why would I need anyone's permission to sell my house?
Your house. That's not right. That house belongs to your grandfather. It's a crime to sell it without being the title holder.
That house was given to me, I remodeled it, and it's in my name. You can't just sell it if you're not the title holder.
Indeed, the house we lived in belonged to my grandfather. However, after my grandfather passed away, I, still single, remodeled it into its current form, and after getting married, my husband moved in to live together. My husband was momentarily speechless knowing the title was in my name, but quickly changed his approach.
That house is where I live too. You can't just kick out a resident like that. It's illegal to sell my stuff. Besides, it was our house since we lived there as a couple, so it's not just your house anymore.
Unfortunately, that house was in my name before we got married. We never changed it to a joint title after marriage. Plus, I moved all the stuff out after, so your things are all safe. I did dispose of the sofa you said was smelly, though.
My husband seemed panicked by the mention of moving out his belongings. He was asking where and when.
It's at your grandmother's house. After all, you're away with Dad gone and no siblings. There was nowhere else to send it but your grandmother's when you went overseas with Audrina.
Hearing his belongings were at his kind grandmother's house seemed to calm my husband for a moment, but his voice quickly filled with anger again.
So, you're the kind of woman who sells the house and dumps the belongings while her husband is on a trip. I'm divorcing you. I'll sue for compensation in the divorce court because of this.
It's a relief you're the one bringing up divorce. I don't want you to come to the house anymore, and I'll be heading there with my lawyer soon.
So, goodbye. I wonder if my husband truly believed he could win if he took it to court. I calmed my panicking parents while contacting a lawyer. A week later, when I went to what my husband calls his in-laws' house, Audrina slapped me before I even entered the door. I had expected it and deliberately received the slap.
Because of you, the house is a mess. A woman who can't even do housework because of a little morning sickness is useless. Pay the compensation in the divorce court and let's divorce.
As I was rubbing my stinging cheek, planning to retort to Audrina, she saw someone behind me and her face twisted.
I thought you showed no remorse, but to strike immediately upon meeting is something else.
Behind me was Carol, my husband's grandmother, looking furious.
Hello. I'm really sorry for sending the belongings over so suddenly the other day. That's all right. If it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have noticed at all.
I had come to the in-laws' house, which was now the home of my husband's grandmother who had kindly accepted his belongings. When I sent my husband's belongings, I included a letter of apology, detailing everything about our situation. As a result, The grandmother was furious with her grandson's husband for hurling terrible words at his wife suffering from morning sickness and leaving her to fend for herself. She was equally furious at Audrina for going on an overseas trip with him without admonishing such behavior. The grandmother, now 80 years old, is a gentle figure to her grandson but a disagreeable mother-in-law to Audrina. Since Audrina married into the family, her relationship with the grandmother, due to their clashing personalities, has always been like cats and dogs. Sure enough, Audrina, upon suddenly facing the grandmother, twisted her face in obvious annoyance, which only fueled the grandmother's anger further. After briefly addressing the shouting match between the two, I entered the house. There, my husband stood, dumbfounded next to the grandmother and Audrina. It might have been shocking for my husband to see his kind grandmother and mother arguing so fiercely. However, wanting to discuss matters with my husband without Audrina's interference, I had informed the grandmother of my visit in advance. And we started the divorce negotiation with my lawyer before Audrina could return. The process didn't take much time and ended smoothly. The compensation amount my husband had prepared for the divorce court and its basis were systematically dismantled by my lawyer, leaving him speechless. After a thorough division of assets and agreeing not to approach me except when visiting our child after its birth, my husband readily agreed, and our marriage ended abruptly. As I was leaving the house, the grandmother and Audrina were still standing next to each other. I addressed them briefly before departing, but they seemed too heated in their argument to pay me any mind. Subsequently, I began receiving a barrage of complaint-like emails from my ex-husband. Apparently, he became annoyed with the grandmother coming to the in-laws' house and meddling. Imagining my former husband and Audrina, who had shouted at me so boldly, becoming meek in front of a petite grandmother, finally brought me to laughter. However, the nature of my ex-husband's emails soon shifted towards seeking reconciliation. Every day there's shouting. They both ask me what I think when they're fighting, dragging me into it, and it's annoying. It's a lifetime request. Please, let me stay at your place. I'll do household chores or anything. I won't do anything terrible again, and I'll never say it. I want to meet our coming child too. I love you. I want to remarry you. I responded mechanically. I will not reconcile. As for the child, you can meet if you pay child support. And left it at that. Eventually, the messages from my ex-husband ceased. Apparently, unable to bear the living conditions, he left Audrina and went somewhere. Not providing any support, Audrina, not yet of pensionable age, is scraping by on her savings. Audrina herself contacted me with this news. No one's helping me. Please, I want to stay at your place. I only went on the trip with my son because he invited me. I had no idea you were suffering so much from morning sickness. She claimed, lining up convenient excuses over the phone, but when I threatened to report her to the police, the calls stopped. Apparently, the grandmother also refused to help, and Audrina, limited by her savings, began working part-time. Thus, she no longer had the energy to call or email me. However, the altercation between the grandmother and Audrina that day is well known throughout the neighborhood, and they saw me deliberately receiving Audrina's slap. Consequently, the neighbors have distanced themselves from Audrina, leaving her to live uncomfortably in her home. Seemingly unable to afford renting a new apartment, she spends her days diminishing in stature. Yet, living alone in a rent-free house should be manageable on a part-time income. My morning sickness has finally subsided, and I no longer vomit. The doctor, learning of my divorce and the circumstances around it, scolded me for accumulating too much stress, which wouldn't help in healing. Though I had been consulting with my family, the stress from living with an uncooperative ex-husband for a while, and dealing with real estate agents online to sell the house, had been too much on my body, and I reflected on this. Moving forward, I plan to avoid stress and return to work. Anyway, I'll be taking maternity leave before giving birth, planning to live at my parents' house. Now, imagining the appearance of my unborn child brings me immense joy. As the days go by, my anticipation grows, and I can hardly wait to see what kind of child will be born. No matter what, I intend to raise my child with love.
Call an ambulance, quick. How can you be so oblivious?
Suddenly, Brittany, who lives next door, rushed into my apartment in a panic. It all started when Tony collapsed in the bathroom. Lately, Tony never parts with his mobile phone, no matter where he is in the house. In fact, he even takes it to the bathroom, apparently talking to someone. Why she, living next door, knew in real time that he had collapsed in the bathroom is beyond me. Honestly, there's no reason for her to call me oblivious. I already know why she is connected to him, and how she knew immediately about his collapse in the bathroom. They might think it's a secret, but there have been many suspicious moments in the past. It's funny they don't realize that they're the only ones who don't notice. I've turned a blind eye until now, but I've decided to put a stop to it. They've been having their way, thinking I've been silently watching. Of course, I plan to retaliate against Tony, but I also want Brittany to suffer just like me. They shouldn't think they can get away with this. It's time for them to pay for 13 years of betrayal. I'm Rosetta, a 40-year-old housewife. I met my husband Tony through a mutual acquaintance. At my age, I long to marry and build a warm home. A friend suggested I meet Tony, saying it wouldn't hurt just to meet. I was all work and no play, with no chances to meet anyone. Watching my friends get married, I wondered what life with someone I loved would be like. Thinking it was just a meeting, I said yes, only to find an unexpectedly great connection. Our hobbies and topics of conversation matched, and our conversational pace and rhythm felt incredibly comfortable. It was as if we had met before, and I wanted to see him again. I had dated a few men before, but none with whom I could talk so freely. My first impression of Tony was of a caring man, always putting me first. I quickly fell for his ever-present kindness.
Rosetta, I thought this would suit you. What's this? It's not my birthday or our anniversary. Can I open it?
Please do. Inside the box he handed me was a beautiful lemon yellow dress.
It's lovely. I've never worn a dress like this. I wonder if it suits me. It's definitely going to suit you, Rosetta. I want to see you in it here.
Here? I'm a bit nervous. I quickly tried on the dress.
Yeah. The size is just right. It suits you as I thought. I'm happy. Thank you.
He nodded with satisfaction as he looked at me. Though kind to me, I sometimes caught a glimpse of his stern side. It was mostly during work-related calls. Even on dates, he'd occasionally receive calls and issue instructions. I'd find myself admiring his commanding presence. He, a manager, seemed to be always busy, even on his days off.
It must be tough getting work calls even on your day off.
Well, it's not too bad. But it can be tough dealing with incompetent subordinates.
Oh, we should head out. Our restaurant reservation is coming up.
Laughing, we hand in hand, hurried to the restaurant we had reserved.
I wanted to marry a wonderful woman like you. Will you marry me? If it's with you, I'd be happy to. Please take care of me from now on.
I felt happy to be able to marry him. But this happiness, I soon realized, was fleeting. I intended to continue working as a nurse even after getting married. But things seemed to be heading in a bad direction.
About the housework.
I plan to continue working, even though we're married.
Is it okay to ask you to help when I have night shifts?
His expression then turned grim.
You intend to continue working? Yes, is that a problem? It's a bit, not right for a woman to keep working after marriage.
Nowadays, it's not uncommon for couples to be dual income. In reality, there are more households around me where both partners are working hard as dual income couples than those with just a housewife. Even after hearing my reasoning, He insisted I should quit working after marriage, so I asked him why. I thought there must be some reason from his perspective. Believing it's important for spouses to understand and compromise with each other, I decided to ask.
Ever since college days, I've been coming back to a dark room and turning on the light alone. Tony, you've lived alone for a long time since college, right? The moment the room lights up and I realize I'm alone, I just hate that feeling.
His expression seemed to darken for a moment.
So that's how you felt. I lived with my family for a long time, but I guess living alone can make you feel that way. That's why I want you, Rosetta, to quit your full-time job. Of course, I'll work in your place. There's even talk of me becoming a director soon. Really? A promotion at this time? That's amazing.
Then, scratching the tip of his nose awkwardly, he replied. Whenever he feels shy about something, he fiddles with his nose and breathes heavily. He looked at me as if expecting more praise, so he must have been really happy. He always prioritized career advancement, working hard to be recognized at work, so this honor must mean a lot to him.
It's not a big deal for someone like me. But there are only a few among my peers who have become managers, so I guess my progress is relatively fast.
Proudly saying this, I felt a hesitation beside him. Sensing my indecision, he leaned in and said,
You're not going to cling to your job when I, your husband, am asking you this humbly, right?
I was speechless at his expression, one I had never seen before. It was unbelievable, and instinctively, I felt I shouldn't meet his eyes anymore, a strange sensation. Being told this, I felt I had no choice but to quit. I wanted to continue a bit longer, but I decided to resign, considering it was my beloved husband's request. Life as a housewife, starting with our marriage, was harder than I expected. I thought being a housewife meant doing household chores, but it was extremely busy. Taking advantage of me being a housewife, Tony stopped doing any housework.
Women's workplace is like the home, right? It's wrong to just rush through work to have your own free time.
I couldn't talk back to him when he said this in a stern tone. In the morning, I prepared breakfast and helped him get ready for work, timing it with when he woke up. Until he returned at night, I finished all chores like preparing dinner and cleaning the bathroom. Tony, breakfast's ready.
I'll be right there.
He sat down at the table, looking around leisurely and sighed deeply.
You know I went out for a work-related drink last night, right? Yes, I thought so since you came back late. What about it? If I went out for drinks, shouldn't the breakfast be Eggs Benedict? I'm sorry, I didn't consider that.
Then he, tapping his finger on the table, silently glared at me. He was particular and would strongly point out anything that differed even slightly from his preferences.
Hey, is this where the vase was supposed to be?
A normal vase placed beside the TV stand. I bought it thinking it would add a nice touch to the home since he likes flowers. I haven't decided exactly where to place the vase, but I wonder if something went wrong.
The vase? I moved it a bit since it was blocking the TV view.
Tony clicked his tongue and glared at me.
With this angle, it blocks the view of the painting from my seat. A masterpiece obscured by flowers. What were you thinking? So selfish to prioritize watching TV. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Try to understand the feelings of a man who's dealing with such a selfish woman.
He kept blaming me relentlessly. Hearing how inadequate I was, I started to strongly believe I was a terrible person.
Rosetta, you've always lived at home and only worked as a nurse, so you might not understand, but society isn't so kind, you know? Being limited to the medical world like that.
When he said this, I started to feel anxious, wondering if my narrow perspective was causing him discomfort.
You say you're a doctor or nurse, but in the end, you only know a narrow world, don't you? Yes, I suppose. I've been working at the same company for 30 years since graduating from college, so I'm good at sensing these things. I'll teach you, so be sure to pay attention.
Honestly, I felt that continuing as a nurse would have been far better. His relentless sarcasm often lasts for 2 to 3 hours. Showing any sign of displeasure means starting all over again with the lectures, so I'm not even allowed to look upset. I focused solely on giving answers that would satisfy him or nodding as if I were listening. While it's possible to ignore Tony's sarcasm, there's another issue that's been bothering me for a while. Brittany, our next-door neighbor. She seems to be a successful influencer, and her voice can be heard every night during her broadcasts. Despite living in a well-insulated condominium, the sound leaks through, indicating she must be playing at a very high volume. I've been troubled by this noise since moving in 13 years ago and have complained 2 or 3 times. Remembering those times still makes me angry. Since those complaints, it seems I've been marked as an enemy in her eyes. Every time we pass each other, she clicks her tongue at me. Although it's a regular occurrence, it's still unpleasant to experience every night.
Don't you know what kind of person the neighbor is?
He looked at me sharply when I asked.
Is there a problem with the neighbor? I hope it's not trouble with them. No, it's not trouble, but the noise. I was wondering if there's something we could do about it.
I don't think it's a big deal. Just don't confront the neighbor directly, okay? Saying that, he ended the conversation and drank his beer. I haven't brought it up since. Tony often comes home late at night due to his busy work schedule. I try to wait up for him, but sometimes I fall asleep. One night, I thought I heard Tony's voice and tried to get up, thinking he was home, but I was too sleepy. I needed to get up quickly to avoid making him angry. However, when I got up, I couldn't see him anywhere. Huh? Didn't he come home? I could hear Tony's voice, but where was it coming from? Listening closely. It seemed to be coming from next door. It also sounded like he was talking to someone, but was he talking to Brittany? Why would his voice be coming from Brittany's apartment at 1 a.m.? Feeling uneasy, I decided to use some savings I had hidden away from my working days to hire a detective. I never thought I'd be the one to hire a detective. What the detective found was unexpected. However, I still felt it wasn't the right time to confront Tony with this evidence. As the year-end approached, I had a bad feeling. With the long holiday break around the corner and the unpredictability of what might happen on the last day of work before then, I felt a bit heavy. That year-end, Tony came home a bit early from his last day of work before the long holiday, seemingly in a good mood. He had been drinking and was more relaxed than usual. Lately, he'd been irritable and taking it out on me, so this was a bit of a relief.
Welcome home, Tony.
You're home early today.
Yeah, it's the day before the break, so I had a few drinks with colleagues.
I see. Must have been tiring. Looking at the fridge, he asked for more alcohol.
Hey, I'm not done drinking. Get me something.
It was a good thing that he was in a good mood, but his face was clearly flushed from drinking too much.
Your face is all red. Haven't you drunk a bit much?
Drunk too much?
Are you saying I can't hold my liquor? Alcohol is essential for office workers. I'm not weak to it.
Saying that, he quickly drank the beer he was holding. He doesn't particularly like beer. He used to boast about how well he could drink, but I've had to pick him up from bars countless times. Despite his grand claims about being a corporate drinker, I always end up taking care of him when he's drunk.
Man, I've sweated a lot drinking tonight. I'll take a quick shower before bed.
Saying this, he took his mobile phone to the bathroom. He never used to bring his mobile phone to the bathroom, but lately, he doesn't let it out of his sight, even there. He even takes it with him to the bathroom, which makes me wonder if there's something he desperately doesn't want seen. Thinking about this, I decided to keep an eye on the situation. From the bathroom where he went, I could hear him talking on the phone. The conversation was too quiet to make out, but I wondered what could be so important to discuss in the bathroom. Then, a loud noise came from the bathroom. Shocked, I rushed there and found Tony, looking pained, curled up in the bathtub. Just as he regained consciousness and tried to get out, he collapsed again, unconscious. I quickly checked his condition. At that moment, someone was furiously banging on the door. The banging was so intense, I thought the door might break. It's a rental, and having someone break the door isn't exactly a laughing matter. And who could it be at such a critical time? Yes, I'm a bit busy right now. When I opened the door, it was Brittany.
Move. Get out of the way.
I couldn't comprehend why she would show up right now. She pushed past me, making a beeline for the bathroom without any hesitation.
Wait! What are you doing? Tony, what's wrong? Tony!
Ignoring my astonishment, she took charge of the situation. She acted as if she were the wife, which was bizarre.
Call an ambulance, quick! How can you be so oblivious?
I couldn't let her continue her reckless behavior. There was only one thing to do. Confront her with reality. I just stood there, looking down on them.
Call an ambulance? And you think you have the right to order me around? What do you mean?
Just what I said. Do you think you, of all people, have the right to give orders to me, his wife? She seemed taken aback by my retort. As if it was unthinkable for me to talk back.
If you're so concerned, why don't you call the ambulance? No, I can't, that's why I'm asking you. Think a little, will you?
Suddenly she got angry and objected. I guess so. She snapped back angrily, obviously because it would be embarrassing for her as the mistress to have stormed into the house in a panic. She's probably afraid of a call revealing the affair. She's flustered to make a call, just staring at Tony lying there. I couldn't help but laugh.
You can't even make a phone call? That's just pathetic.
My words seemed to anger her.
What do you mean, pathetic? Are you mocking our pure love?
Her belief in their pure love, despite being just an affair, was terrifying. Focused solely on themselves, their blindness was almost enviable, but this wasn't the time for that.
If you're really concerned about him, making a call should be easy. You should be able to do it.
I challenged her to make the call, showing her the phone. If she really could, there should be no problem. Furious, she glared at me, her face red with anger. Tony seemed to regain consciousness from our voices. He was unconscious, and even when he woke up, he still seemed to be in a lot of pain. He was still in pain, struggling to speak.
My head hurts like it's splitting. Call an ambulance.
He looked extremely pained, his usual composed expression gone. I remarked.
It must be hard. We really should call an ambulance, shouldn't we? What are you waiting for? Do it now.
Right. Something needs to be done quickly. Ignoring his words, I decided to take action. Leaving him rolling in agony, I silently left the house. I took the waterproof-packed mobile phone that had fallen in the bathroom, so he couldn't call from his phone. Brittany and Tony, now awake, seemed relieved and were leisurely affirming their love for each other. Blind to everything but themselves, they didn't even notice I took the phone. I couldn't deal with this foolish, cheating couple any longer. Seizing the opportunity, I decided to leave the house. I immediately left the house and contacted Brittany's boyfriend, Robert. Robert is Brittany's boyfriend, with whom she has a relationship serious enough to consider marriage. He stays over about half the week, so they're practically cohabitating. I've run into him a few times in the hallway and at the garbage disposal area. He's a doctor working at a nearby hospital. I remembered receiving his business card before.
Good evening. Sorry for calling so late. It seems Brittany is at my place for some reason. Could you come and pick her up?
Is this Rosetta? Long time no see. You're saying Brittany is at your place? What do you mean by that?
His voice over the phone sounded confused. Understandably so. Anyone would be surprised by a sudden night call from their girlfriend's neighbor.
I'll explain the details later. Are you at work right now?
No, I've just finished work and am killing time at a restaurant near the workplace. Brittany said she had a stream tonight and asked me to come back late. So, Brittany had been making sure not to let Robert stay at her place. She was casually talking to Tony over the phone while Robert was away.
Can you come as soon as possible?
I'll head over right away. Let's meet at the condominium entrance.
Thank you. I'll join you there.
3 minutes after the call, he arrived at the condo's entrance, and we went to my apartment together. On the way, I briefly explained the situation.
To put it bluntly, it seems Brittany and my husband Tony have been having an affair for many years.
What? What do you mean?
I found out through investigation. They met in a service store 13 years ago and have been involved ever since.
Robert was visibly shocked by my words. 13 years? Since that long ago?
Yes. She moved into the apartment next to ours by chance 2 years ago.
No way. Then what am I? I thought we were going to get married. He was struggling to come to terms with the reality of being cheated on. It would be so understandable, considering his marriage plans.
It seems to be for money. I suspected my husband's infidelity and hired a detective. The investigation results indicated that.
That's unbelievable.
Brittany rushed into our apartment when Tony collapsed in the bath. Apparently, they were talking on the phone even in the bathroom.
He seemed deep in thought but then looked at me. That explains it. No wonder she never lets go of her phone. But you said Tony collapsed. Is he all right?
He's fine, just drank too much. No danger to his life.
After explaining briefly, I led him to my apartment. Entering quietly, they were still engrossed in their melodramatic scene.
I'll fight against the world for you, Tony.
Having such a beautiful woman love me, I'm blessed. This must be a trial from God to reach true love. In the 10 minutes it took me to leave, contact Robert. Within the short time, an epic story seemed to have unfolded. A tragic tale of lovers who can't swear eternal love to each other. I was surprised Tony could spout such cheesy lines. Glancing at Robert beside me, he looked indescribable. Seemingly shaking from the cringeworthy dialogue. Unable to bear it any longer, Robert dropped his bag, alerting them to our presence. What's going on here?
Robert, why are you here?
Strangely, both were naked, which was comical.
Why? That should be my line. You told me not to come home early because of a stream. Was it for this?
Normally mild-mannered Robert raised his voice, and Brittany seemed a bit taken aback.
Well, that's because, you know, the fans and antis are troublesome. I was worried about what would happen if they found out I have a boyfriend.
Brittany looked evasive. I knew Robert only from brief exchanges in the apartment complex. He never seemed like someone who would raise his voice. Indeed, he listened calmly when I explained everything to him earlier, showing his ability to control his emotions. So, for Robert to react this strongly, she must have really crossed a line.
Stop taking people for fools. To think you've been secretly having an affair with the neighbor for 13 years.
She suddenly became defensive, her eyes darting around. I thought maybe I'd marry Robert. Is that bad? She tried to look innocent and appealing, but it only backfired with Robert.
We were cohabitating because we talked about marriage someday, but now I just can't believe you.
Brittany, realizing Robert was genuinely angry, quickly switched tactics.
No, this is a misunderstanding. I was just teaching him about streaming, like personal training for the digital age.
Brittany seemed to think we knew nothing about influencers or video streaming, and was clearly trying to bluff her way through. Despite her desperate attempts to wriggle out of the situation, Robert wasn't having any of it.
Private lessons, is that it? Have you already forgotten what you yourself said earlier?
I played the cheesy dialogue I had secretly recorded at high volume.
Hey! You recorded this without me knowing? That's a violation of privacy. Delete it now.
Privacy? You have no right to talk about privacy.
I'm filing for divorce.
Tony, clearly not expecting me to initiate a divorce, was panicking.
Divorce? How are you going to live without me? You're living off me, and now you're talking about divorce? Have you lost your mind?
He seemed to think I would break down and beg him. His male superiority mindset was apparent, still in disbelief over the current situation. His absolute confidence baffled me, but it didn't matter anymore.
Say whatever you want. You can only act tough for so long.
Eventually, we got divorced. After the incident, I immediately sought a lawyer who is an expert in divorce and infidelity cases. Presenting the evidence video helped me demand more than the usual alimony. Meanwhile, Brittany's engagement with Robert was called off, and she now lives a secluded life. This is partly because her streaming blew up after the affair scandal. Right after the infidelity news broke, fans analyzed Brittany's posts, exposing her relationship with Tony. The fans' sharp eyes discerned details from subtle reflections and background elements in her posts. The posts and their hints led to the discovery of her affair with him. The scandal affected Tony too. His company received numerous calls, forcing them to acknowledge the situation. He was fired, for his company took the situation seriously. The company must have wanted to get rid of the trouble. I guess so. After all, a high-profile influencer's affair with a married corporate employee from major enterprise was criticized heavily. When the company's stock dipped around the time of the scandal, they couldn't ignore it any longer. Now, he struggles with the public's disdain and rarely goes out, a consequence of his own actions. He's often the subject of online posts, making it risky for him to venture outside. I ran into Brittany once after the turmoil. She appeared as if waiting for me while I shopped at a grocery store near my workplace.
How come you're living comfortably off a big settlement while I suffer? Isn't that unfair?
Her audacity was typical.
There's nothing unfair about it. It's all the result of your actions. I have nothing to say to you.
And what's with your high and mighty attitude? Because of you, my engagement was broken off.
She approached me, growing more agitated.
I was so close to marrying a doctor. Just stop it, will you?
You've been secretly having an affair while engaged, and yet you're playing the victim. I can't understand your logic. You should mind your behavior.
What do you know?
You're the one who's the talk of the internet now. If someone sees this, it'll end up online again.
Realizing the risk, Brittany quickly covered herself with her hood and left in a hurry. Since separating from Tony, I've been enjoying my single life. Living at my own pace is wonderful. I've returned to my nursing job, surprisingly recalling much of my previous knowledge. Surprisingly, my body seems to remember, and I am able to do a certain amount of things. Though I once doubted my future, I now live a fulfilling life, forgetting Tony and Brittany as my form of revenge.
Taking care of dad and mom is all on you, my dear wife. If you oppose, I'll divorce you and sue for alimony, huh?
Could he really believe such an absurd demand would pass? I looked at Georgina, utterly exasperated. Alex stood there boldly, giving me a nasty smirk while looking at me. He must think I would accept his demand. Indeed, I've complied with the requests for the sake of the in-laws, believing it was the right thing to do. Regardless of Alex, I thought those two were good people. But now, having seen Brittany's true nature, I've lost all concern, let alone any sympathy. I smiled back at Alex. All right then. Let's get a divorce.
Don't come crying to me later. Talking back to your husband, what a failure of a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over dad and mom. Unbelievable.
Oh, my apologies for that.
Exactly. I'd prioritize dad and mom over my job any day. Unlike you, who's utterly heartless.
Alex boasted too proudly. Then why didn't he take time off work now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help out his parents. Blaming and pushing responsibilities onto me without lifting a finger, what a way to shift the blame.
From now on, even if we see each other at work, don't you dare speak to me. I should have chosen a different company.
Alex's parting words pushed me to my limit.
Then you're fired.
What? Fired? You're not my boss. What are you on about? Gone mad from the divorce shock?
I couldn't help but reveal a truth Alex was unaware of. I'm Ren, 40 years old. I run an apparel company. I started this company at 26. Having lost my parents early, I motivated myself by setting goals and focusing on achieving them. Decades later, I've dedicated my life to stabilizing the business, working tirelessly. As my friends got married one by one, I didn't even have a boyfriend. There was no time to play. I traveled for work, both domestically and internationally. There were years I don't recall taking any time off. Surrounded by relatives and acquaintances, I was often met with veiled criticism disguised as concern.
Aren't you going to run out of time to have children if you don't hurry up? Is work really that enjoyable for you? Don't you get lonely?
Arguing back would only invite more nagging. So, I took to leaving those situations with a forced smile as quickly as possible. All the effort I poured into my life paid off, and the company's performance steadily improved. Finally, I could afford to take regular breaks and had the luxury to enjoy my personal life. By this time, I was already 38 years old. At this point, I wasn't particularly keen on marriage, but the idea of having a good partner was appealing. That's when I met my husband, Alex. Our meeting was sparked by a soccer game. Suggested by a subordinate, I went to watch a game on a whim and met Alex there, cheering for the same team, and we hit it off. After attending a few games together, we started going out, and then he asked me out. Alex was the same age as me, but seemed remarkably youthful. He had many hobbies, from baseball to video games, manga, and golf, dragging me along to all sorts of activities. Having never really had time to play before, my time with Alex was incredibly exciting and fun. Being my first boyfriend at 38, I was honestly quite thrilled. One day, Alex broached the subject.
Would you meet my parents?
If I'm going to marry someone, it's going to be Ren. That's why I want to properly introduce you to them.
This was about 2 months into our relationship. Caught off guard, I couldn't refuse, always looking forward to the fun times with Alex. Things went smoothly, and a week later, we visited Alex's parents' house.
Oh my! To be dating such a lovely person, my son is a lucky man.
Indeed. What a wonderful young lady. And for Alex to introduce a girlfriend to us, that's a first. He must be really smitten. Warm and welcoming, Alex's parents showered me with compliments, leaving me flattered and embarrassed throughout the visit. Alex, sitting next to me, smugly commented,
Right? A catch at 38. Right? A catch at 38.
Though crudely put, it seemed meant as a compliment in Alex's way. With such wonderful parents, I felt we could have a good relationship after marriage. I was relieved the meeting went well. However, I was slightly concerned that Alex referred to his parents as mom and dad. A calling I hadn't often heard from adult men in my circles, which initially surprised me. But considering the differences in each family, I decided not to dwell on it negatively. Alex seemed to have a good relationship with his parents, often praising his mother excessively. While endearing, some aspects felt off-putting at times. Like when the conversation turned to cooking.
What kind of dishes do you excel at, Ren? I wouldn't say I excel, but I often cook Western-style meals.
At this, Alex enthusiastically chimed in.
Right. She makes steak a lot. They're edible, but when compared to Mom's cooking. Oh, that's a great idea. Why don't you teach her your recipes?
I understood the comfort of familiar tastes. But his wording left me feeling complex. Unperturbed by my feelings, Alex's mother was delighted.
Well then, I must compile a notebook for Alex's sake.
She was enjoying herself. As we were about to leave, a shocking truth came to light.
When are you two getting married?
Asked by Alex's mother. Alex casually replied, causing me to be taken aback.
I'd marry her right now if I could. It'd make life easier, especially since part-time work doesn't pay much. Part-time?
Indeed, when I first met Alex and inquired about his job, he vaguely mentioned
Something like sales.
I too had been vague about my job, saying only something in apparel, as we were still just getting to know each other. Everyone has things they'd rather not discuss. I figured we could talk about it more once we got a bit closer. I had completely forgotten about it, never imagining he was working part-time. Stunned, Alex explained with a frustrated look.
What's with that face? Thinking even at 38? But, you see, there's a good reason for this.
Turns out, Alex's mother has always been frail and prone to sickness. Then, 2 years ago, his father fell ill and needed care. Alex, who was working in sales at a steel company at the time, quit to take care of his father, switching to a more flexible part-time job.
Mom alone would have a hard time, right? I just wanted to be there for my parents. I thought it'd be fine to stay part-time for that reason.
Alex glanced at his parents and nodded.
Recently, both Mom and Dad have been in good health, so I'm thinking of getting a full-time job again. I gotta work hard if I'm going to marry Ren.
Hearing about the part-time work, I felt ashamed of my disappointment. Alex had simply prioritized his parents over his job. What a kind and warm person he is. And now, he's thinking of what's best for me. After our conversation, I thought for a moment and then made Alex an offer. If you're interested, why don't you apply to my company?
Eh? Work at the same company as Ren?
Yeah. It's a bit different, but you were in sales before, right? We're actually looking for sales staff right now.
I meant well with my suggestion, but Alex visibly grimaced.
I'd rather work somewhere I can earn more. I want to make Mom feel secure.
Did he think I wasn't earning enough? I explained more about our company. Showing him job listings, I pointed out the salary and holidays, along with other benefits. Alex, who had been skeptically browsing the site, gradually warmed up to the idea.
This might not be too bad after all.
And so, he applied to a position at my company. Fortunately, we were looking to significantly expand our sales department, so Georgina was hired. Pressured somewhat by his parents, we registered our marriage.
Who would have thought we'd end up working at the same company?
Indeed.
By the way, which department are you in? It seems Alex still thought of it as just the company I work for, not realizing I'm the owner. I hadn't kept it a secret on purpose, but it felt awkward to bring it up, and I hadn't mentioned it yet. This seemed like a good opportunity, so, with a nervous heart, I was about to reveal the truth.
Actually,
Alex cut me off with an unexpected remark.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'll probably quit eventually anyway. Eh?
Quit. What did he mean by that? A bad feeling washed over me. Alex glanced at me and laughed, a smile I hadn't seen before. It scared me.
What? You got a problem?
No, it's not a complaint, but what do you mean? I'm not planning to quit my job now. Oh, unless we have kids. But my company offers maternity and paternity leave. Kids are out of the question. We're already busy with Dad and Mom. Dad and Mom?
As I tilted my head, Alex mimicked me mockingly.
Yeah, my parents. Didn't I say they need care? Rosalind? I heard, but you said they've been doing well lately. That's why you re-entered the workforce, right?
Even if they're doing well, they're still elderly, aren't they? Aren't you worried at all? Or what? As a wife, are you planning to shirk that responsibility?
I couldn't grasp what Alex was trying to say, feeling bewildered. I needed to clear my head and sort things out. Alex was trying to push the responsibility of caregiving onto me. And from how he spoke, it seemed he eventually planned to have me quit my job to prioritize caregiving.
I'm not saying you should quit right away. Having two incomes helps financially. For now, just come back to the family home with me on our days off.
What is that supposed to mean? I wasn't completely unprepared for the caregiving conversation. I had intended to help out, and I had thought that I could be of assistance in the future. But I never imagined being expected to return to my in-laws' house every holiday, eventually being burdened with caregiving responsibilities. What surprised me most was Alex's attitude. Before marriage, he was positive and reliable, but he changed drastically as soon as we got married. Is this person really Alex? I didn't want to believe it. This isn't the person I wanted to marry. I wanted to escape from reality by closing my eyes tightly, but Alex's angry voice relentlessly broke through.
Listen, you're my wife. Don't defy me. Got it?
I was so shocked by the change that I couldn't agree or disagree. I wish I hadn't married at all if I knew this would happen. Regret filled my mind, and the word divorce quickly followed. Society might frown upon a divorce so soon after getting married. But that seemed less important than wasting time with someone unpleasant. I prepared the divorce papers right away. The issue was the reason for divorce and the in-laws. The reason for divorce could be managed somehow. If necessary, I could even involve a lawyer. But the in-laws were a bigger concern. As Alex declared, we started visiting his parents' house on our days off. I was reluctant to go because Alex treated me poorly. But his parents were overjoyed every time we visited.
I'm sorry for making you come here on your day off.
No, it's okay. Brittany, teary-eyed with joy, made it impossible for me to rudely decline their hospitality. Every visit, they prepared my favorite sweets, telling me how much they appreciated it. Though I disliked being controlled by Alex, seeing Brittany happy made it difficult to bring up divorce, and time passed. By 2 months into our marriage, Georgina and I had started visiting his family home separately. Our days off just didn't align anymore. Initially, I had forced myself to adjust to Alex's schedule. Meanwhile, I had kept it a secret that I was the president of the company. The Alex before our marriage might have been fine, but revealing this to the current Alex would only invite trouble. Although it would be easy to find out if he looked into it, luckily, Alex seemed oblivious. Alex was a source of concern both as a husband and as an employee, causing numerous problems at work. I wanted to resolve the issues at work quickly and get a divorce. But what about Brittany? Despite everything, I didn't want to upset them. Torn, I headed to my in-laws' house as usual. Lately, I had become accustomed to entering the house without waiting to be invited. Today, as always, I opened the door and took off my shoes. That's when I heard a familiar voice from the back. Undoubtedly, it was Alex's voice. He was supposed to work today, but perhaps his schedule had changed. Feeling awkward, I walked down the hall and was about to enter the living room when I overheard their conversation.
That person, she's not very considerate, is she? And her housekeeping is subpar. She's earnest, but couldn't you find someone better?
Indeed, it was Brittany's voice. However, the tone was so full of malice, unlike anything I had heard from her before. It sounded like something out of a movie, so spiteful and unlike the Brittany I knew. Yet, it was unmistakably Brittany's voice. Despite all the praise she had given me, the thought of the gentle Brittany saying such things tightened my chest. I didn't want to hear any more, but my legs felt too heavy to move. Sorry, Mom. But, she's tall, so she might be able to carry you if necessary. With a bit of training, she could become more useful.
Well, for now, she's pleasant and financially supportive, so I suppose that's acceptable. We're hoping for potential, I guess.
Alex and Brittany were laughing carelessly as they spoke. As I listened, my heart pounded with the realization that they were talking about me. Georgina's constant complaints were one thing, but I was shocked to discover Brittany's hidden side. Brittany, who always seemed so grateful, who would lower their head in thanks repeatedly, making me feel almost guilty. We shared laughs over snacks and meals I had cooked. Regardless of Alex's intentions, I thought I had a good relationship with Brittany. I had hesitated on divorce partly because of Brittany. Yet, according to their conversation, I was merely a caregiving resource for Brittany as well. Brittany then added insult to injury with this remark.
For now, I'll keep praising her and egging her on. She looks so foolishly happy then. Alex, you should learn from me. A fool and his scissors are easily parted, as they say.
Hearing this, I left the house as if fleeing. After calming myself down a bit, I contacted Alex and his family.
I'm going to be busy for a while and won't be able to visit or contact you.
I'll reach out again later. Despite multiple calls from both Alex and his family, I ignored them all. Alex's angry messages were even recorded on the voicemail.
Do you think you can trouble Mom like this? Apologize to her in person right now. You don't have the right to refuse.
As if anyone would comply after being spoken to like that. Naturally, I ignored this too. At work, I made sure not to run into Alex and started staying at a hotel after hours. During this time, I methodically prepared for divorce. Then, one day when preparations were sufficiently in place, I was finally caught by Georgina, who had been lying in wait at the office.
Hey! Ren!
Upon spotting me, Georgina looked like he was about to grab me but restrained himself, likely due to the presence of others. I decided to move the conversation to an empty conference room to talk with Alex.
I've been looking for you. What do you think you're doing? How many times have I called you? Do you have any idea how much I've been searching for you?
Alex was clearly furious. His breath was heavy, and his eyes, bloodshot and glaring, seemed to curse me with every look. As soon as we entered the room, he approached me with heavy footsteps. Then, standing right in front of me, he aggressively grabbed my wrist.
Let go! I told you on the phone, didn't I? I'll contact you when I've calmed down.
Is there anything more important to you than my dad and mom? Do you realize how lonely you've made them feel by not being there?
Lonely? They were talking behind my back, and yet he dares to complain. I trembled with anger. I wished I could shut him up right there and hurl at him the worst insults I could think of. But I was too agitated to articulate my thoughts properly, so all I could do was grit my teeth and glare at Alex. Taking advantage of my silence, Alex continued.
Poor them, right? Even now, they're hungry because there's no food at home. Forget work today. You should just go back home.
Don't you dare tell me what to do with my work. You're not a child, and caregiving doesn't mean you can't move. It's about time you stopped being so dependent.
I shook off Alex's hand and yelled.
I have an important meeting later today. There's no way I can just take off. And if it's so important, you should take a day off and go yourself.
There was no need for me to sacrifice so much for such people. Throwing away important work for them? Alex probably never expected me to fight back. He staggered back, surprised.
You're talking back to me.
A wife's place is too. I've been thinking, your values are skewed. What do you mean a wife's place? They're your parents, aren't they? Shouldn't you be taking care of them instead of pushing it onto someone else?
Indeed, Alex's work today was supposed to be just preparing documents and meetings in the office. The document preparation could be rescheduled, and the meetings could be rearranged if he asked others, without causing much inconvenience. If Brittany was so important, he should be the one to take time off. If he won't, it shows how little they matter to him. Yet he dares to blame and try to control me. Such a convenient mama's boy. Disgusting.
What? That's ridiculous. Why should I, the husband, have to bow my head and skip work just to clean up after my wife?
Clean up what exactly?
It's time to make things clear. Listen up. Taking care of my parents is your job as my wife. If you can't do that, you're worthless as a wife.
Alex launched into a tirade, puffing up his chest with rough breaths, as if trying to intimidate me. Was he trying to scare me? He seemed like some playground bully. Not scary at all. What even is the value of a wife? Why do I have to be evaluated? So, what exactly do you want from me?
I asked, my voice laced with a sigh.
Alex snorted derisively.
Taking care of Dad and Mom is all on you, my dear wife. If you oppose, I'll divorce you and sue for alimony, huh?
Could he seriously believe such an absurd demand would fly? I looked at Alex, utterly dumbfounded, but there he was, standing tall and proud, giving me a nasty smirk. He must think I'd comply with his demand after becoming attached to Brittany. Indeed, I had been accommodating to the in-laws, thinking it was for the best. Regardless of Alex, I thought those two were good people. But now, having seen Brittany's true colors, I couldn't care less, let alone feel any sympathy. I smiled back at Alex.
All right then. Let's get a divorce.
Huh?
Alex sounded completely taken aback.
Do you even understand what you're saying?
Yes.
I can't be the wife you want. So, let's get a divorce, shall we? If you want to sue for alimony, go ahead. Whether you'll get it is another matter, though.
I pulled out the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to Georgina. I had been keeping them on hand ever since I considered divorce.
Are you serious? Do you realize what you're doing?
Yes.
Please, sign them quickly.
Alex froze, seemingly in disbelief. Seeing his hesitation, I said,
Oh, you're not divorcing? Just talk, then?
Which made him furiously scribble his signature on the papers. After reviewing the signed document, everything was in order. I immediately handed it over to my secretary to file.
Well, we're strangers now.
As I stated matter-of-factly, Alex spat out.
You'll regret this. Talking back to your husband, what a failure of a wife. Good riddance. Choosing your job over Dad and Mom. Unbelievable.
Oh, my apologies for that.
Exactly. Even if I lost my job, I'd prioritize Dad and Mom. I'm not heartless like you.
Alex said this with too much pride. Then why didn't he take time off now? Instead of pushing it onto me, he should just take a break and help out his parents. Blaming me while he just complains is just passing the buck.
From now on, even if we see each other at work, don't talk to me. I should have chosen a different company.
Alex's parting shot pushed me to my limit.
Then you're fired.
I believe it was the coldest voice I've ever used. Alex stopped in his tracks and turned around and puzzled.
Huh?
Dismissed? You're not my boss. Have you gone mad from the divorce shock?
Alex laughed. Perhaps thinking it was a joke. I sighed softly and fixed my gaze on Georgina. When our eyes met, Alex flinched, looking at me anxiously, bracing for what was to come. I inhaled deeply and spoke calmly.
The funny one is you. You don't even recognize the face of your own company's president?
Huh? No, that can't be.
Alex's mouth twitched as he pulled out his smartphone and started searching. As he stared at the screen, the color drained from his face. He must have finally realized who I was.
You're the president of this company?
Finally caught on, have you? Alex knelt down and bowed his head to me, his voice trembling pitifully.
It's not like that, Ren. I didn't know.
Not know? No, you chose not to know, didn't you? I never brought it up, but there were plenty of opportunities for him to find out. A simple search on his phone would have revealed my name, if not my photo. It was typical of Alex. He probably never had any interest. A man without particular concern for the content of his work, focusing solely on income and time off. That's why his work performance has always been subpar. To you, I was merely an afterthought, wasn't I? What you and your parents truly desired was a diligent, hardworking wife. Someone to take care of them, anyone would do, right? Alex, mouth agape, shook his head, his face turning a ghastly shade of pale.
Not at all. Had I known you were the president, I would never have expected you to shoulder the caregiving. I would have taken care of Dad and Mom myself, allowing you to concentrate on your work. With sufficient funds, one could easily hire assistants. You'd have me earn while outsourcing caregiving to professionals, and you'd merely enjoy life, right?
Alex, with a faint smile, whispered,
I wouldn't do something so terrible.
Indeed, had Alex navigated things more adeptly, such a future might have been attainable. Had he proposed this before I discovered his parents' true nature, I would have agreed without hesitation. I'll earn so you can dedicate yourself to caregiving. I believe he would have sincerely said that. If Alex and his parents not shown their true colors after marriage, such a future could have been plausible. He squandered that opportunity by his own doing. Alex looked up at me, eyes seemingly moist, with a plea.
Please, Ren! Can't we start over? We had good times, didn't we? Let's visit all those places again.
True, you always took me to places I never knew. Every place you took me was indeed fun.
A glimmer of hope shone in Alex's face.
Right? So, if that's the case.
However, that was merely you donning a mask to get married. Life with you post-marriage was profoundly disappointing. That is. I wonder if the divorce papers have been processed by now. Well, I must prepare for a meeting. Regarding the dismissal, I'll contact you later. You may leave for today.
I packed my belongings, waved flippantly at Alex, and reached for the door. But before I could open it, Alex grasped my left hand. Turning around, I faced Alex's glare. I glared back and simply asked,
Anything else?
Anything else?
This isn't over.
Suddenly deciding on a divorce, then revealing you're the president, and now a dismissal. I can't just accept this. It's all too arbitrary on your part. The divorce was initiated by you.
You didn't expect me to agree to it. Moreover, you should have properly informed me that you were the president.
It appears Alex had planned to use the divorce as leverage to control me. The revelation of my presidency must have been a shock to him. Blaming others and shirking responsibility onto his wife. Such actions are unbecoming of an adult. It's absurd that I had to set everything up for him, yet he never questioned it. He's always lived by blaming others. I'm at a loss for words from sheer disbelief. Alex is grinding his back teeth, seemingly regretting letting go of his financial support, but that's not my concern.
Isn't that too self-serving? Blaming me for your lack of planning and ignorance isn't fair,
I said, causing Alex's face to flush red as he yelled back in a strained voice.
Coward! How can the president of such a large company justify firing an employee for personal gain? That's unacceptable. Such tyranny won't be tolerated.
Alex postured as if he had the moral high ground. His thinking is too immature, always believing he's in the right. Can he not comprehend what's been said? I couldn't help but hold my head in my hands. Seeing me like this, Alex, thinking he had won, smirked triumphantly.
See? I hit the nail on the head. Should I bring this to light? You'd be the one in trouble.
I'm astounded by your foolishness. If it comes out, you're the one who'll suffer. What are you talking about?
I cut Alex off, listing names.
General Affairs Hoyt, Sales Gracelyn, Winter, and Accounting's Paisley.
Who else was there? When I asked Alex, he began sweating profusely and looking away.
What? What are you talking about?
You know very well.
I just named female employees you've been persistently harassing. They've come to me seeking help.
Most employees don't know Alex is my husband. Only my secretary is aware. Among them, I received complaints like,
I'm troubled by the constant invitations from sales Alex.
At first, I doubted my ears. My own husband was hitting on multiple young female employees. And despite their rejections, he kept coming back. I was mortified and apologetic beyond words.
I was just trying to foster camaraderie among employees,
Alex defended.
By specifically targeting women over a decade younger than you? And inviting them to hotels? What kind of camaraderie were you trying to build?
There were messages sent from Alex to these women, undeniable proof. No matter what Alex said, there was no escaping it.
You're not only underperforming, but you're also a nuisance to others. It's my job as president to remove those who are detrimental to the company, isn't it?
But that's right.
And from accounting, there's a report that you might be fudging expenses.
What about that? Surely, you wouldn't stoop so low, would you? Alex averted his eyes and fell silent. Regrettably, it seems that was true as well. A mama's boy, a womanizer, and on top of that, a miser. Moreover, to think he caused trouble not just for me but for others too, it's disappointing not just as a husband but as a person. I'm disillusioned by my lack of judgment in not seeing him for what he was. Feeling inept for not having seen through such a person.
I'll make sure all suspicions are cleared up before proceeding with the dismissal, so rest assured. Well, I'm leaving now. You better get along with your parents back home.
Alex collapsed on the spot. Slumped over, muttering something under his breath. He must have realized it was all too late. Even as I reached for the door, Alex, now devoid of energy, didn't say anything more, and I left the room. Upon further investigation, all suspicions against Alex were confirmed. After making Alex apologize to the affected female employees, he resigned voluntarily, taking responsibility. Now jobless, Alex returned to live with his parents at home. A while later, he attempted to start working again part-time, but then something unexpected happened to Alex. Until now, though former Rosalind needed care, former Brittany was essentially able to manage daily tasks on her own. Thanks to this, Alex only had to help out occasionally. However, former Brittany has recently started showing signs of dementia, including instances of wandering at night. A father who physically requires care and a mother who is usually fine but occasionally shows symptoms of dementia.
I just can't find peace anymore. We're running out of money too. Please help.
I received a plea for help from Alex, indicating he was at his limit. If our divorce had been amicable and there were no hard feelings towards my former in-laws, I might have been inclined to help. But these were the people who had looked down on me as nothing more than a caregiver. There's no room for sympathy.
It sounds tough, but I'm afraid I cannot offer any assistance. Furthermore, as we are now strangers, I kindly ask that you refrain from contacting me further. Depending on the situation, I may have to take appropriate actions.
After conveying this, I no longer received any messages from Alex. After divorcing Alex, I had decided I was done with marriage and resolved to live alone. However, just when I had settled on this, someone I had known for many years through work confessed his feelings to me. The trauma from Alex made me consider declining, but knowing this person's sincerity from our long acquaintance, I gratefully accepted the offer to start dating. Whether this will lead to marriage, I'm uncertain, and part of me doubts, fearing a change post-marriage, but this person is the most gentle individual I've ever met. Moreover, since he is also a business owner, we can share and understand each other's work. Unlike with Alex, he truly feels like a partner should. If I can spend the future with him, this happiness I feel now will surely continue. Hoping for such a future, I continue to work hard today.
Being called by my name just gets my heart racing. It's incredibly thrilling.
In the dead of night, I stumbled upon Tanner and Rebecca, frolicking in the back seat of a car in the garage. Shocked by the unbelievable scene before me, I locked the two of them in the garage and headed back to my parents' house.
I want to show those two, who've been making a fool of me, what real hell feels like.
Back at my parents' house, I explained the situation to my parents and another person, asking for their cooperation in my revenge. Everyone agreed, and I resolved to make Tanner and Rebecca experience true hell. My name is Natasha. I'm a newlywed. I met my husband, Tanner, back in our student days. We were classmates in high school, worked together on committees, and had a few interactions. But that was the extent of our relationship. I never imagined that someone like him would approach me now, as adults.
Natasha, I really do love you, he said.
Our relationship began right after graduating high school. During our final cultural festival as seniors, Tanner started to get involved with me, and we began to interact as friends. Despite barely knowing each other, he started pursuing me relentlessly right after graduation. I couldn't understand why a guy who was so popular among girls during our school days would be interested in someone like me. Even when I asked him why, he would simply say he was smitten, never providing a concrete reason. Suspicious of his motives, I spent 6 months investigating, but couldn't find any convincing reasons, and eventually, overwhelmed by his persistence, I accepted his proposal.
If I just wanted to date and ditch someone, I wouldn't put in all this effort. Can't you trust me already? I truly love you, Natasha, he said.
Hearing those words, I began to consider trusting him. But as a novice in love, it took a lot of courage for me to date someone as popular as him. That's when I turned to my older sister, Rebecca, for advice. Rebecca was beautiful and stylish, rumored to be among the most popular in school, as I heard from her classmates. I thought consulting with Rebecca, who had plenty of experience in love, would help me find the answer. When I talked to her about it, her encouragement felt like a gentle push forward.
Just for dating, a playboy wouldn't spend 6 months. I really think Tanner is serious about you, Natasha. Why don't you accept it?
Rebecca's words convinced me to start a relationship with Tanner. A year went by. In the beginning, Tanner was incredibly kind. He treated me like a princess. He took me to my favorite places, and every anniversary, birthday, and event was celebrated with a surprise, making it feel like a dream. For someone inexperienced in love like me, All these felt like fairy tale moments, and I was thrilled to have taken the chance with him. Until the day we decided to get married.
What's with this filthy room? I like things clean. You know what happens if you turn this place into a dump, right?
After deciding to get married, we bought a new house. Tanner worked as a laborer in his father's company, earning around $40,000 a year. He didn't have the means to buy a house. Yet, disliking used things, Tanner insisted I stretch our finances to purchase a new home. Calling household management a hassle, he dumped all responsibilities on me, living freely himself.
This is your house too, so I wish you'd help with the cleaning. I have a job too, so let's support each other, okay? You can at least tidy up, can't you?
I work as a nurse with irregular shifts. Tanner actually spends more time at home and earns $30,000 less than I do. Despite the significant differences in time and money, he doesn't cooperate at all. I cover all household expenses, while Tanner only spends his salary on leisure and consumables. Before marriage, he spoke of mutual support and striving together. But after moving in, Tanner changed completely. He became a total freeloader. I once tried to get him to cook, but the taste and his knife skills were disastrous. The house ended up a mess, and I gave up on having him cook. If I let him do the laundry, he'd throw everything in together, causing shrinkage and color bleeding. He was far from trustworthy. Even Mary, my mother-in-law, had concerns, but I never anticipated it being this bad until I saw it with my own eyes.
You're the one who told me not to do housework, right? Now you're making it sound like it's my fault when you start getting called out?
Initially, I patiently taught him household chores, but Tanner was short-tempered and prone to violence. Just mentioning household tasks triggered such reactions, and out of fear, I once said I'd handle everything myself to avoid his outbursts. But I'm only human. Nursing is many times harder than people think. My stamina has declined since my early 20s, making it tough to balance home life with work. And on top of that, the household chores have more than doubled compared to when I lived alone. I often wish I had extra hands. Is it so wrong to ask for help in such circumstances? Tanner becomes immediately enraged, showing his aggressive side whenever his sore spots are poked. Once, when I dared to stand up to him, he threw things against the wall and almost injured me. I've been scared of him and even considered divorce, but each time he would become uncharacteristically kind, showering me with love as if he were a different person.
I'm sorry, Natasha. I'll never do this again. I truly value you. Please don't leave me. I genuinely love you. I can't live without you.
Rarely feeling needed by others, I couldn't dismiss such affection from Tanner and saw no alternative but to forgive him. He was the first person I truly loved. I couldn't envision a life with good encounters after losing him. Such thoughts were reinforced by various things said by Rebecca and Tanner during our relationship.
No one else would put up with someone like you, Natasha.
If you leave Tanner, you might spend your life alone.
At that time, I was completely dominated by the thought that no one but Tanner could love someone like me, a belief instilled by his manipulative words. Even when I thought about leaving, memories of our relationship and Tanner's need for me held me back. It's like the saying, the one who falls in love loses. I was completely ensnared by Tanner's manipulative tactics.
I want to support you if I can, but housework is just not my thing. I'm counting on you for that. Please don't say such sad things. I'll try to do what I can.
He probably noticed my fear after his outburst. As soon as he approached me, he embraced me and gently stroked my hair to calm me. Tanner was skilled at using both the carrot and the stick, always making me feel needed just when I thought all was lost. For someone shy and introverted like me, being needed and loved by someone was a way to affirm my existence. Tanner had great communication skills and was an observant person. He was adept at manipulating someone to the brink of life and death. I was frequently bullied during my school days, which affected my self-esteem. Tanner exploited this, convincing me he was the only one who needed me. He claimed to love and accept even my flaws. Little did I know at the time, this was all part of his manipulative tactics. To be honest, it never even crossed my mind. Until the day I witnessed that scene. As our first wedding anniversary approached, encouraged by my parents, we decided to have a wedding ceremony with Tanner.
Rebecca had her wedding at a garden, but where do you plan to have yours? Maybe a church wedding would be nice?
The decision to have a ceremony was partly due to my parents' suggestion. Dad and Mom have always been deeply concerned about me. They know I'm the kind to care for others, sometimes at my own expense, readily sacrificing myself for the sake of others. When I became a nurse, they worried if I could truly handle it.
You have a kind heart that tends to overdo things. Remember, it's not good to always put others first. Take care of yourself too.
Despite their worries, they were my biggest supporters when I decided to become a nurse. Dad's concern also came to the forefront when it came to my marriage. Usually not one to meddle, Dad for the first time wanted to have a serious talk with Tanner and invited him over.
Natasha is our treasure. If anything happens to her, I'll never forgive you. Are you prepared to take care of her?
Dad didn't hesitate to intimidate Tanner, who seemed nervous. But Tanner didn't flinch and insisted earnestly that he wanted to marry me.
I also want a solemn atmosphere for the wedding, so maybe we should look for a church. I know I've been a burden to Natasha, so I want to make the main event especially wonderful for her.
Lost in thought, Tanner's voice brought me back to reality. Seeing Tanner smile sheepishly made my heart race. I never imagined he thought that way. Partly because his words and his everyday actions are so different. I wish he would be more kind on regular days and not just on special occasions. If we could just eat together, watch movies in the living room and laugh, I'd be so happy. Why does Tanner have to say such awful things? Does he really love me? Does he really need me? Having little experience with relationships, I kept wondering if something was wrong with me. Maybe Tanner's lack of desire is because I'm lacking in some way. I must try harder. I convinced myself, suppressing any thoughts of confronting Tanner. Contrary to my feelings, Dad and Mom seemed impressed by Tanner's words, looking at him kindly.
You're lucky, Natasha, to marry such a good man.
My parents thought Tanner was a good husband. And at that time, so did I. It's true, Natasha is so lucky. She's not good at much besides housework. Are you sure you're not missing anything, Tanner? Rebecca, who happened to be there, sat next to Tanner without hesitation. She flirtatiously placed her hand on Tanner's knee and looked up at him.
No. That's not true at all.
Rebecca is the opposite of me, sociable and beautiful. She's always fashionable and brand conscious. And thanks to her husband who runs an IT company, she lives a lavish lifestyle. Rebecca often looked down on me, belittling me to elevate herself. But she too was adept at getting her way, manipulating me skillfully. Back then, I didn't realize I was being used by Rebecca. I felt happy to be relied on and pampered.
Is that so, Natasha? You too shouldn't let go of such a good man so easily either. After all, you're just a burden with no redeeming qualities.
Rebecca! Such mockery was a routine occurrence. She used her pretty face and tears as weapons, pushing people away from me. Everyone seemed to side with Rebecca. The only exception was my parents. Mom always scolds Rebecca sharply whenever she mocks me. Seeing no way to turn the situation in her favor, Rebecca quickly leaves the scene, but the pain in my heart lingers. What was a joyful moment is ruined by Rebecca's words. Tanner, along with Dad and Mom, apologizes, but he just laughs it off, saying it's nothing. Deep down, I wish for some comforting words, but I don't have the courage to ask for such audacity. It's my fault, as always, I tell myself, accustomed to resolving things on my own. Time passed and it was now the day before the wedding. The ceremony was set to be held at a church, and today, Rebecca was visiting my house. She said it was closer to the venue from our place. Let's call it a night since it's early tomorrow. I'm borrowing your bed. After having dinner and a shower, we enjoyed some drinks. It was past 10 p.m., and we were all feeling the effects, so we decided to get some sleep. I would share the bed with Tanner, and Rebecca would sleep in my room. Around midnight, with the feeling of warmth vanish from the futon, the chills woke me up.
Tanner?
It was still autumn, a bit chilly for a nighttime stroll. Maybe he went to the grocery store without saying anything? It was unusual for Tanner to leave like that, so I decided to look around, starting with checking the car in the garage. That's when I heard it.
No, Tanner.
It sounded like Rebecca's voice coming from the direction of the car. Tanner's car was there, not looking like he went to the grocery store. Thinking Tanner might be nearby since Rebecca called his name, I walked towards the sound.
Being called by my name just gets my heart racing. It's incredibly thrilling.
I spotted the two in the back seat, engaged in something. Just as I was about to approach and call out, I witnessed an unbelievable scene.
Rebecca, can you keep your voice down? It's impossible, Tanner, be gentler with me.
The two of them were naked, embracing, caught in the midst of intimacy. Shocked and wordless, I collapsed on the spot. They didn't notice me, completely absorbed in each other. Maybe it was too hot with the windows up, or they needed some fresh air, but the car windows were open. Because of that, Rebecca's sugary voice and Tanner's animal-like breaths were audible. The disturbing sounds filled me with discomfort and nausea, and I crouched down, trying to hold back vomit. What's happening? What are Rebecca and Tanner doing? Is this a dream? Am I having a nightmare? Unable to believe the scene before me, I kept trying to escape reality. Oblivious to my presence, the two continued their act, engrossed in each other. Tanner's desire for Rebecca, something I've never experienced, painfully tore at my heart. And then, from the two of them, I heard words even more horrifying.
It's like a dream, to be connected with you like this. You really love me, don't you? You did tell me before that you've admired me since our school days.
Rebecca's words, revealing a shocking truth, left me stunned and confused. Were Tanner and Rebecca acquainted since their school days? But how could Tanner have known Rebecca?
When I saw you at the cultural festival, you were just too dazzling. I used Natasha to get close to you. When I heard you were married, I couldn't hide my shock.
Tanner's words brought back a memory. On the day of the high school festival, Rebecca, who was hunting for boys, visited my class's booth. There, as I played the role of a waitress in a cafe, being teased and mocked by Rebecca, Tanner had fallen for her at first sight. Learning that Tanner had targeted me for use since those days brought tears welling up in my eyes.
But now, I'm connected with you like this. When you approached me, it felt like a dream. And to suggest something so wicked, you really are someone not to be underestimated.
Hearing this, my astonishment was apparent. Their relationship started with Rebecca seducing Tanner, who knew he had feelings for her. To be with the married Rebecca, Tanner had to marry me, become part of the family, and not arouse suspicion. Rebecca's husband, Scott, often traveled for work and was rarely at home. Becoming relatives with Rebecca, who was nearly free, meant their relationship would raise fewer suspicions. They reflected on the past, discussing their actions. Hearing this unbelievable truth, I quietly moved away from the scene. Unable to contain my tears, I ran to the entrance, weeping, and collapsed once I closed the door. I can't believe that they had been using me all along. And how they thought of me in such a way. It was unforgivable, absolutely unforgivable. Love turned into rage and hatred, and I, holding the keys, headed to the garage where the two of them were. The garage was secured with a shutter, and the entrance was the only way in or out. By the time I returned, both were exhausted, quietly sleeping in the back seat. Perhaps they never thought I would find out. With a sigh at their foolish actions, I slowly closed the shutter and locked it. Then, I headed to my parents' house, not far from here, and poured my heart out to Dad and Mom.
What's wrong, Natasha? At this hour? And your clothes?
Arriving in my pajamas, Dad was taken aback with his eyes wide. Mom, concerned, immediately let me into the house. Both were somehow awake, which made me wonder. It was unusual for them, with their regular lives, to be up at this time. Had something happened? With that question in mind, I stepped inside, only to find Scott, of all people, sitting on the sofa.
Good evening, Natasha. What's going on? Why are you dressed like that? Did something happen?
Scott was indeed sincere and a gentleman. Too good for Rebecca, he too must have been deceived into marrying her. As I hesitated about whether to share the day's events, Scott seemed to sense something and spoke up. "Did you hear it too?" Scott asked. At that moment, my eyes widened in shock. "Hear what?" "This," Scott said, pulling out a recording device. The voices I heard from it left me speechless.
So bold to suggest something so wicked, you really are not to be underestimated.
It was a recording of the very conversation I had overheard between Tanner and Rebecca.
How do you have this?
My voice rose in surprise, and I was visibly shaken. Scott, looking uncomfortable, started explaining. Rebecca had been reckless with money and men. He found out 3 months ago when someone from his company reported seeing Tanner and Rebecca entering a hotel. After discovering the affair, Scott hired a private investigator to gather evidence of their infidelity. Today, knowing Rebecca was visiting my house, the investigator intensely monitored her, capturing this recording.
At first, I thought if money could make up for my absence and make Rebecca happy, I'd stay out of it. But when Tanner got involved, it was a different story. I couldn't stand it, knowing how much you cared for him.
Scott had always cared for me like a real big brother. And he couldn't bear to see me hurt because of them. Just knowing how he cared was a relief to my heart.
I was collecting evidence against Rebecca to confront her for a divorce. I got the decisive evidence today and came to discuss it with your parents.
Turning to Dad and Mom, I saw them looking distressed. Dad was even apologizing profoundly to Scott. "I'm sorry for Rebecca to do such a thing. We're deeply ashamed as parents. We know an apology won't make up for it. Please, do whatever you feel is necessary to find peace." Watching Mom cry and apologize, my heart ached.
Please, lift your heads. It's not your fault. Those who used Natasha and committed these acts are the ones to blame.
Though Scott must be hurting too, he remained composed and comforted my parents. After calming them down, he turned to me.
Natasha, what are your wishes? I'm fine as long as I can sever ties with Rebecca. But you must want more than that.
Yes.
My wife seduced your husband. I bear some responsibility. I want to support you fully, so you can find closure.
Empowered by his resolute gaze, I declared my desire for revenge.
I want to show those two who belittled me what true hell feels like.
Overwhelmed with anger and frustration, I let my tears flow freely. Looking up at Scott, I voiced my true feelings for the first time.
I want them to taste despair.
Leave the financial aspect to me. I'll do everything I can. What do you want to do with those two?
Hearing Scott's words, I candidly voiced a plan that had come to mind. I have to say I was surprised at how quickly such a daunting idea had occurred to me. Scott, Dad, and Mom all agreed to cooperate upon hearing it. And so, our family's revenge plan commenced.
Natasha, what were you thinking? How dare you lock us up like that?
2 days later, Tanner and Rebecca, finally escaping from the shutter, showed up at my parents' house. They were still in the same clothes from 3 days ago, likely not having showered. Their clothes were wrinkled and faintly sour-smelling. Rebecca's makeup was ruined, her face and attire a mess.
Who do you think is responsible for being locked up like that?
I calmly responded at the entrance. But my response seemed to infuriate them even more.
Shut up! You think you can talk down to me like that, huh? How could you lock us up and leave us for 2 days? If it weren't for the service guy, who knows what could have happened to us? When we went back home, we found strangers and they showed us some contract and told it wasn't our house anymore. What's going on? Explain yourself.
The truth was, with Scott's help, that garage was set to be demolished. Since the house also belonged to me, while they were locked up, I moved all the essentials to our family home. The house is now being rented out to an acquaintance. It was designed considering eventual cohabitation with our parents, so it found a tenant quickly due to its excellent accessibility. Tanner's belongings were haphazardly packed into bags and sent to his parents' house. With the people Scott brought in, the work was done swiftly and efficiently.
The noise and the stink, give me a break. Just hearing those screams in the morning is enough to stress me out.
I grimaced in disgust at their state. Tanner, unable to tolerate my expression, lunged at me. But Scott appeared and grabbed his arm, protecting me.
Scott! You two really are despicable. A man who dares to raise his hand against a woman. What kind of character do you have? Aren't you ashamed? Why is Scott here, and even Mom and Dad?
It's our family home, so naturally, Dad and Mom would be there. But what truly shocked Rebecca wasn't that. Everyone who used to dote on her now stood behind me, protecting me. She couldn't understand why no one was trying to help her.
Don't you realize the situation you're in? What did you say?
As Tanner shook off the restraining hand and scowled. Scott played the recording from the other day.
What? We were being bugged. But how, where?
They didn't have any wearable devices or mobile phones on them, so it seemed impossible that they were bugged. While they were confused, Scott smirked mischievously.
I've been aware of your affairs for a while now. That's why I hired an investigator to gather decisive evidence of your infidelity.
Upon hearing Scott's words, Rebecca's face turned pale. She thought her affairs had gone unnoticed, never imagining she was under investigation. Overwhelmed by the professionalism of the investigators, Rebecca was speechless, as if engulfed in darkness.
Never thought you'd provide such conclusive evidence. I was so surprised, I laughed, Scott said.
That's a crime. Yeah. If we report this to the police.
Do you two have any evidence of that? Scott countered.
Their attempts to intimidate Scott were futile. His firm stance, showing no fear and words sounding like he was about to hunt them down, caused Tanner and Rebecca to falter.
If you two, who are financially inferior to me, want to hire a lawyer and go to court, I'm more than ready. If I say I just happened to encounter you and recorded it, it doesn't prove I hired an investigator. If you want to challenge me, gather evidence that could defeat me first.
Indeed, a savvy businessperson. His quick thinking is extraordinary. The two, unable to respond, switched their target to me.
What about you locking us up? That's a serious crime. Do you have proof? What?
Stunned by the question, Tanner was at a loss for words. Now it was my turn to corner them.
There's no evidence that I locked you up, but there's proof of your affair on the garage's security cameras. I bet they captured some unsightly footage of you two getting into the car and doing indecent things.
Hearing this, the color drained from their faces, and they began to back away in fear.
I believed your words for years, thinking you truly cared for me. But it was all an act, just to connect with Rebecca and cheat on me. No, it's not like that. Natasha, please forgive me. I really love and no one else. Me too. What happened with Tanner was just a momentary lapse, nothing serious. I swear it's true. Please believe me, forgive me, Scott.
Realizing their disadvantage, the two abruptly changed their tone and started apologizing. They were clinging to our feet, weeping and pleading for forgiveness in their disgraceful state.
Let go. What? I said let go.
I yelled at Tanner, and Scott shook Rebecca off.
Why would anyone forgive you too? No matter what happens, I will never forgive you. No matter how much you apologize or beg, I will never forgive you. Rot in hell with your regrets.
With an anger never shown before, the two were thoroughly intimidated and fled the house. Dad and Mom, who had been watching worriedly, came to comfort me, and Scott gently stroked my hair, saying I did well. At that moment, overwhelmed with relief, I broke down in tears. The harrowing days I endured felt like hell itself. Clinging to memories, I tried to endure, but I was reaching my limit. Before breaking down, I managed to end that life, and the feeling of liberation made my emotions erupt. Thus, I successfully executed my revenge on Rebecca and Tanner. They fled to Tanner's parents' house, but as I had already explained the situation, they were denied entry and turned away. Moreover, due to their misconduct, John, my father-in-law, refused to employ him any longer. Tanner was already problematic at the company, so it didn't take long for him to be disowned, as I learned later. Rebecca and Scott soon divorced. Despite Rebecca's pleas until the end, she lacked the financial means to contest the divorce settlement and had no choice but to accept Scott's terms. Naturally, Tanner and Rebecca were charged a significant sum for compensation, considering the cancellation of the wedding and all the preparations that were ruined. Thanks to Scott hiring an excellent lawyer, we managed to make the two sign an agreement ensuring they'd pay up, and now they are both working desperately to fulfill it. I explained the situation to everyone who was supposed to attend the wedding. They were all disillusioned but supportive, offering understanding and assistance. I also made sure to explain the situation to the neighbors when the two were locked in the shutter for 2 days. I didn't want any commotion or the police getting involved, which would jeopardize the plan. Being well liked by the neighbors and Rebecca being known as the unpleasant sister who always looked down on me, everyone sided with me. As a result, Tanner and Rebecca are now viewed coldly by everyone. Once living a lavish life, they now lead a life of poverty, struggling daily, considerably thinner, as I've heard from friends. 4 years have passed since the incident. I'm devoted to my work, and Scott is also busy with his own. Dad and Mom are living fulfilling days, supporting my life and career. They even encourage me to find happiness when I meet the right person, motivating me to look forward. Hoping to make them proud, I'm also investing in self-improvement.
Mom and Dad are taking me overseas. This is just going to be luggage, so I'll leave this behind with you. It might be hard for you, but it's a good way to kill time, right?
Kristen said with a smirk, implying her superiority to Sophia. Kelly, who married into an elite family, always boasted about her daughter Kristen. On the other hand, my family, with Sophia the same age as Kristen, come from a normal family. Influenced by Kelly, Kristen grew up flaunting her financial comfort and academic excellence, always emphasizing how different she was from Sophia. For Sophia too, this summer vacation is crucial, as she's preparing for college entrance exams. Kristen, caught up in her own excitement, left a pile of school assignments at our house and went off to her overseas trip. However, Sophia, the recipient of Kristen's spite, decides to take action. My name is Mary. I'm a working mother in a regular household, with my daughter Sophia facing exams this year. Every morning, I make breakfast, wake up Sophia and my husband Harold, hand them their lunches, and we all head out. Life was supposed to continue like this, day after day. But it quickly changed. Now, my life is filled with struggles. It's because of my sister-in-law Kelly, married to Adam, who works in a globally expanding company. Kelly, who married a rich, and her daughter Kristen, have become a source of stress. Sophia and Kristen, being the same age, were inseparable like twins during their childhood. Living not far from each other's homes, family gatherings, especially during long vacations, meant they were always together. But as Kristen started attending various classes and tutoring, their playtime significantly reduced. Gradually, we lost touch with Kelly's family, and by the time we met again, Kristen, maintaining top grades at a prestigious private school, had become Kelly's pride. In Adam's absence due to frequent business trips, Kelly enjoyed her life as an elegant housewife. With Kristen, nearly guaranteed a scholarship through school recommendations due to her grades, you could say their whole family was sailing smoothly. However, for Kelly and Kristen, With too much time on their hands, our family working parents and Sophia studying hard for general exams became an easy target for mockery. When did Kelly's assertive personality twist into something unpleasant? Her straightforward and cool attitude was lost, replaced with sending us unpleasant, boastful messages. It wouldn't matter if I was the only target. But on weekends, they started visiting, ostensibly to play with us. Bringing expensive confectionery as a pretext, clearly to disturb us, especially Sophia.
We bought this cake, so let's have tea. Sophia should come and join us. Kristen, go call her,
Kelly said, summoning Sophia without my permission. Of course, Sophia was studying. Soon, Sophia came down to the living room, looking displeased. Kristen, with a somewhat mean smile, nudges her.
People taking general exams have to cram a lot, right? Must be tough. But since your cousin's here to play, you should entertain her.
Well, you don't need to study, but I. Unlike the provocative Kristen, Sophia is shy and can't stand up for herself. All I can do is try to end the tea party quickly. I swiftly prepared the tea and hastened them to finish the cake. Meanwhile, Kelly keeps bragging about how brilliant Kristen is and how hard she works at her extracurriculars.
Isn't it odd? You're a mother and you hardly ever boast about Sophia.
Kelly suddenly said so out of nowhere. But the reason I don't retort with boastful stories is that Sophia has asked me not to. Sophia possesses many virtues that neither I nor Harold have. I always want to counter. But Sophia seems to think there's no need to let Kelly and the rest know. I tolerate and respect Sophia's wishes, responding nonchalantly.
Mom always bragged more about you than me, right? It's the same thing.
Kelly, looking satisfied, laughed it off.
Yeah, that's right.
This way everything ends as if nothing happened. Yes, our parents also favored Kelly over me, always showing more enthusiasm and expectation for her. They sided with Kelly, who married the elite Adam, all the time. I could tolerate that, but what really got to me was how they constantly compared the grandchildren, always praising Kristen. I was utterly fed up with our parents' attitude. Despite feeling a strong irritation inside, I had to endure it for Sophia's sake, day after day. Then, the children's summer vacation arrived. But with it came turmoil. Kelly's family was preparing for a month-long trip abroad. Since they seemed to be unconcerned with academic studies, we had been hearing about their proud travel plans every week. We thought about taking a trip ourselves, but Sophia was determined.
Without Kristen around, I'll be able to study in peace.
So, we dropped our plans. However, just before their departure, Kelly's family showed up at our house with a pile of assignments.
Kelly, what is all this?
Summer homework, of course. I faced them, feeling a mix of surprise and bewilderment. The massive amount of assignments, covering our table, was obviously from Kristen's school.
We're leaving soon, right? These would just be extra luggage, and Kristen doesn't have time for such tedious stuff, so we thought we'd leave it to Sophia. Yeah, it might be a bit tough for you, but give it your best shot.
Sophia and I were both stunned. Kelly and her family wore smug smiles. They didn't even try to hide their condescending looks. But did they realize how absurd their words were?
I have my own assignments, and summer courses too.
For a student facing exams, there's no time to waste on trivial things. Sophia's dream school is highly competitive. She couldn't possibly spare time for Kristen's work on top of her own studies and summer courses. Sophia tried to speak up, but Kelly cut her off.
It's Sophia's last summer in high school too, so I originally said no to this plan, you know. But you guys aren't going anywhere, right? Unlike our Adam, traveling must be hard for you guys.
Kristen joined in with a spiteful look at Sophia.
My school's on high level, so I'm not sure if Sophia can handle it, but it's a good study opportunity, right?
After their carefree remarks, they left the blank assignments and departed for their trip. Adam probably didn't know about this. He's been away for work, leaving before the summer break. Without the fair and serious Adam around, they brazenly dumped this on us. I tried talking to our parents about Kelly's outrageous behavior, but they still sided with her, making me furious. You need to study anyways, so just do it.
Kristen is giving you this chance, which makes her the better child.
Sophia's not trying hard enough. Instead of complaining, why doesn't she just study quietly? My mom said so selfishly. With Dad always agreeing with her, I realized I couldn't expect anything from our parents. Dejected, I gave up on consulting them. Sophia not getting a recommendation was largely due to her reserved nature. Those selected for recommendation slots were active in student council, clubs, and had outstanding grades. Sophia, being shy, always found it challenging. But she was distressed enough to say she could study more in the absence of Kelly's family. I was filled with seething anger. Sophia too was furious. But, unlike my vehement refusal, she reacted differently. To my surprise, she started tackling Kristen's assignments alongside her own studies.
I won't lose. If I can't beat Kristen, I can't beat the exams. Mom, I'll show them I can do it.
That way of thinking never even crossed my mind, but Sophia was determined.
I'll create work that will shut them up.
She was breathing heavily. If Kelly and Kristen returned to find the assignments untouched, they would be troubled. But my concern was how much more they would interfere with Sophia after that. Kelly and her family were looking down on us, thinking, she can't possibly do it. Well, then, we just had to surpass their expectations. Next time we're asked for something, we can just say, we're going to refuse, since we already completed that massive load of summer homework. Impressed by Sophia's positive attitude, I changed my mindset. No longer just enduring, but ready to fight back boldly, that was the only way to win against Kelly and her family. I confessed everything to Harold and persuaded him to join us as a family in tackling the tasks. Sophia and I were more than ready, but Harold, preferring to think it over, called it a day. However, within 2 days, Harold came up with a summer vacation schedule to get through the assignments. He planned not only the homework but also divided household chores among the 3 of us, set days to check progress, and even ensured Sophia had time for her own studies. He thought of everything, including breaks from the study-heavy routine. We were amazed at the precision of his hastily made plan.
Dad, you're actually amazing?
Sophia asked innocently. Harold with a bashful smile replied.
It's what I do every day at work.
Though he seemed modest, he was the best leader for Sophia and I. As a result of our family's united effort, we finished the assignments perfectly and ahead of schedule. Sophia was able to focus on her studies, and her mock exam scores improved significantly. I was relieved to see her gaining confidence. Harold, in a great mood, picked up one particular assignment for a final check.
This French essay is outstanding. With this, you and I could go back to college.
The truth is, Harold and I couldn't pursue doctoral studies due to financial reasons. Working on this reminded us of the French literature seminar room where we first met. That was how hard we were tackling the assignments. Studying and researching really was fascinating. So fascinating that it made me worry that Kristen, who considers such things as troublesome, might miss out on this joy. Right before summer vacation ended, Kelly's family returned. They collected the assignments without much inspection, seemingly satisfied that they were just done. Their own stories seemed far more important to them. Then, a few days into the new term, an unusually cheerful Kelly and her family visited. Apparently, some of the assignments were exceptionally good, earning praise from teachers. Kelly and Kristen were proud, despite having no part in the work.
And the French essay. Next week, it will be presented as an outstanding piece in front of everyone.
Which reminds me, didn't you and Harold major in French literature or something? Seems like it didn't lead to great job prospects. Anyways, since it's Kristen's assignment, she'll be the one receiving the accolades.
Kelly probably enjoyed thinking we were desperately working on just a child's homework. Kristen could hardly contain her mocking laughter, delighted with the bonus recognition. Later, Kelly sent us a photo of Kristen holding the award certificate, but I just replied, "Congratulations," and deleted the picture. However, trouble arose the following month. In the middle of the night, an enraged Kelly barged into our house. Kristen crying beside her.
Hey Mary! Write that French thing again. You did it once, so you can do it.
What? At this ungodly hour? You're asking for French.
As I tried to calm down the frantic Kelly at the front door, Harold and Sophia woke up. The French essay from the summer vacation, which earned Kristen the recognition, was selected for a presentation at the cultural festival. She accepted, thinking it was just a reading, but then was told to submit a new essay for another competition. Kristen struggles with French, even simple compositions are hard for her.
So she thought, I'll just have Sophia write it again.
And imposed a deadline on Sophia without her consent. But Sophia ignored the new French essay request. The unity during summer vacation had grown into a big confidence boost for her, strengthening her trust in the family. Today, just before the festival, Sophia finally responded to Kristen, who was angrily pressing for the deadline.
I didn't write the summer vacation essay, so I don't know. Why don't you ask Mom and the others?
Kristen, always hiding behind Kelly, was essentially a timid and mean-spirited girl. She couldn't say anything directly to us. Sophia was unusually cold to her, and in a panic, she thought of consulting Kelly, but unfortunately, she was out at a mom friend's party and didn't get home until very late at night. When Kelly got home, Kristen was waiting and crying, confessing about the essay. Kelly, who had no intention of going to the cultural festival, calling it child's play, was therefore uninformed and shocked. Without caring that it was midnight, she rushed over to our house in a panic.
So, it's about that French essay. Make a new one, please. Poor Kristen, she's been deceived by Sophia.
It seemed that was the situation. Honestly, I was surprised at Kelly's audacity to leave such a big problem entirely up to us. Sophia, watching Kelly and the others screaming at the front door, remained cool and unimpressed. Anyway, we no longer had a reason to write a new essay. I recommended admitting honestly that she couldn't write.
I can't let her do something so pathetic,
Kelly retorted. But our family firmly continued to refuse.
We've done our duty with the summer assignments. We won't do anything more. Enough is enough, or we'll call the police, or Adam, before that.
With Harold's words, Kelly suddenly fell silent and took Kristen home with her. A few hours later, our home phone rang. It was our displeased mom back home. Apparently, Kelly had gone crying to her parents right after.
You should write Kristen's essay, Mom said.
But maybe because she was woken up at an unreasonable hour, Mom was complaining differently than usual, not taking Kelly's side.
Seriously, both Kelly and Kristen are the worst. Kelly is always angry, and Kristen is always just tagging along. Calling in the middle of the night without even considering the inconvenience of others.
The phone call continued with complaints about Kelly. Mom might be a victim in her own way, but she just seemed to be looking down on Kelly. I quickly refused to help with the essay. We no longer wanted to be involved with them. Later, they somehow managed to finish the French essay using a translation app. Naturally, the quality was miles apart from the summer assignment. The teachers were in an uproar over the poor quality. There were even suggestions that the award-winning assignment might have been plagiarized, and Kristen was questioned.
That essay you submitted for the festival, I've never seen such poor quality. We've discussed it with other teachers, and we think we need to verify if you really wrote your summer vacation essay yourself. I did it, teacher. I really did. I didn't plagiarize, I swear. If that's true, there's no way your essay would be this poorly written. The simple grammar and spelling mistakes are glaring. It's as if it was hastily written in a panic to meet the deadline. For a high school student, anyway, you'll have to explain properly.
After being repeatedly questioned by the teacher without her mother's protection, Kristen finally confessed to having someone else do all her assignments. As a result, her grades were reassessed. The presentation at the cultural festival was, of course, cancelled, and she was given a suspension, with more assignments than those from the summer vacation. Her internal grades were significantly reduced. The details of the assignment commission were also recorded in her report, and it seemed the incident was over. But that was not the end. Following the severe reprimand she received, classmates started confessing problems with her school life. Turns out, Kristen had been targeting poor or timid kids, throwing money at them to forcefully do her assignments. It was revealed that those who couldn't resist because of poverty or those humiliated and laughed at when called out by Kristen's group brought the issue to light. The school tried to settle the matter quietly. To clarify the situation, Kristen underwent several interviews and investigations. This was no mere issue for a report card. The incident led to the cancellation of Kristen's designated school recommendation. Since the second-ranking student took her place, Kristen was forced to take general entrance exams, but she had long lost any time to study at school. The season quickly turned to exam season, and, as a result of her lack of study, she failed everything. On the other hand, since Kelly and her family hardly visited our house after the cultural festival, Sophia, who had diligently studied, got into a university. Her efforts paid off, and she got into the national university she wanted. Our house was wrapped in a celebratory mood, and I made a lavish dinner to celebrate. Kelly, without changing her heart, forced Kristen into a gap year, fearing they would be seen as a family that couldn't send their daughter to college. Kristen, maybe due to her pride, started studying at home but made no progress. The atmosphere in Kelly's house grew worse by the day, with constant parent-child fights, but all they blamed was us. Adam finally became suspicious of Kristen's attitude, which seemed to target Sophia excessively. He was completely unaware of the incident Kristen had caused at school. But once it was revealed, Adam was deeply shocked.
I can't believe it. Kristen has grown into a person who looks down on others, flaunting her wealth and just taking what's good.
Kelly had baseless absolute confidence in her parenting. Adam trusted her, but it was Kristen who had caused an incident involving the school and several classmates. Desperate, he tried to convince them to at least apologize to our family, but their pride got in the way, and they refused. They wouldn't bow their heads, and instead, kept trying to put the blame on us. Adam, hearing bad things about us every day, came to despise his wife and child from the bottom of his heart and eventually decided to divorce. Kelly and Kristen, kicked out of their luxurious house, decided to return to their parents' home. Kelly thought they would be welcomed since they brought cute Kristen, but things didn't go as she planned. Our parents, who always supported her, started treating Kristen almost like a jinx because of the multiple problems she caused. And their attitude changed drastically. They had always been harsh on Sophia but now turned to her with kind voices, desperately trying to please her. They even tried to send her expensive gifts. This confused both me and Sophia.
For your successful admission, how about we buy you a luxury brand bag? You've worked so hard, you deserve all the luxury. Yeah, unlike Kristen, it's okay if it's a bit expensive, tell your grandpa what you want.
Their parents praised Sophia and disparaged Kristen. Sophia had long lost her affection for her grandparents and wouldn't be appeased with a brand bag. Neither me nor Sophia wanted to get back at Kelly and her family for what they had done. We didn't want to look down on them, so we refused the gift even if it was for celebration. Why were our parents trying to please us? It seemed to be related to Kelly and her family coming back.
Kelly's back, right? We want you to help her. For the family. You know, we're getting old, and there are household chores.
My mother hesitated on purpose. They couldn't handle Kelly and her family, so they were calling us to take care of them. But we had long lost any desire to see Kelly and her family's faces. Not just me, but my whole family refused and didn't step into my parents' house. Moreover, we had no intention of visiting them anymore. To my parents who were desperately trying to please us at our front door, Sophia smiled back and said,
We're moving. We're not coming back to this town, so take care of Kristen and her family. I have university, so please don't bother us anymore. Goodbye. What?
Our parents could only stand there with mouths agape. Yes, we had decided to move all together after that summer vacation, regardless of the exam results. And so, we cut ties with my parents and Kelly's family and headed to a new town. The ones left behind are reportedly fighting every day at my parents' house. Since the divorce with Adam was finalized, their living standards plummeted, and Kelly, with no face to show to her mom friends, became increasingly reclusive. Without jobs, the mother and the daughter blamed each other in a nasty fight, causing uproar with my parents almost every day. As for us, we are expanding our social circle smoothly at the new place. Sophia studies seriously at the university, immersing herself in seminar research. She has made new friends in addition to her high school ones and looks happy going to the university every day. It was a year of mostly studying, but now Sophia has grown enough to balance both study and play. I hope she goes out more from now on. Although the moving expenses were a bit of a burden, we have enough savings for her to choose her favorite path. The unreasonable task of the summer vacation assignment was an absurd incident, but someday we'll be able to laugh about it, saying, "Remember when that happened?" By then, we'll remember not the malicious faces of Kelly and her family, but the unity and effort of our own family.